Call to order. I call the Patton Township Board of Supervisors May 11, 2022 meeting at 5:30 to order. Thank you. Announcements. Welcome all, especially new Patton Township residents, to the Patton Township community, a place for all. Doug, are there any announcements?
Need to announce that the board did meet in executive session with the manager, the director of finance and administration, the township solicitor, and labor council to discuss contract negotiations with the police officers association.
Okay. Any other announcements?
No, ma'am.
Seeing none. As you are able, please rise and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, additions to the posted agenda. Any item or items that the supervisor would like to add to the posted agenda at this time? Seeing none, public comments. Residents, taxpayers may address the board on issues of interest to the township. Comments related to a specific agenda item should be deferred until the point in the meeting. If you are attending on Zoom, please use the raised hand feature of the Zoom application and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. If you are attending in person, please approach the podium and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. Please be respectful and defer from using any profanity, derogatory, or any offensive language, abbreviations, or gestures during the meeting. Respect is always given by this board, and expect the same in return. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Are there any public comments at this time? Okay. Seeing none, moving on, next on the agenda. Okay, we have presentation and public hearing, gypsum moth control for 2022. Doug, is that
As you recall, we did do some egg mass surveys last fall in response to numerous sightings of gypsy moth caterpillars last year. We used Joe Wilson, who's a consulting ecologist. The results of that survey showed that the only place that really warranted spraying was the areas of the Grays Woods Park and Grays Woods Preserve, which is at the end of Grays Woods Boulevard. We've contracted to have an applicator spray those areas with BTK sometime between May 15th and June 15th. We did send out notices to all the homeowners who live around that area, letting them know that this would be coming. There's also an ad that will run in the CDT for 3 times. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on, and we'll get a notice a couple of days ahead of time that they're going to be doing the actual spraying. At that point, we'll post the trails in that area too, advising people to stay out of there on the day that it's sprayed. If anybody's interested, we do have an information sheet on the BTK insecticide that's going to be used if you have information, if you have questions about it. That's all I got.
okay? Moving on, next on the agenda is no mow May proposal. Supervisor Whitman, would you like to present that?
Right. So, first of all, thank you for proposing this, Merrill, David, and Anita Tees also mentioned it to me a week before, and I've been thinking that great minds, we come up with great ideas. Thank you. That being said, there's a consensus that I'm privy to only on the, a little bit on the the surface. The consensus is that because we are into May and because the whole process of writing a resolution, and which we don't have written, and then reconvening to sign it wouldn't actually occur until after May. And that being said, I believe, and I know that the manager is going to correct me if I say this wrong, that the people who enforce the ordinances will wink, wink, look the other way.
No.
No, I knew he would. Then you say it, because I'm going to say it wrong.
Since people really haven't, I mean, not everybody in Patton Township may agree with this, so to give people a proper opportunity to voice their opinion, I don't think we should be rushing into this for this year. I think it's a valid proposal to look at for next year. I think if people want to let their lawns grow a little bit longer, that's fine, but our regulations still read that, you know, you can let it grow up to 6 inches, then you have to cut it. I mean, this is in some sense a courtesy to your neighbor who may not agree with your approach. So, you know, if the board wants to take action and tell us not to do it, we won't enforce it. But barring that, we will continue to enforce the grass height at this point.
Does anyone on the board feel it would be okay to take action and ask?
I think we should hear from Meryl David first. She has her hand up.
Perfect, yeah, okay, yeah, for sure. And I know, yeah, go ahead, Meryl. Thanks, Dan.
Am I unmuted? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for entertaining this today. Firstly, I do want to emphasize that the idea of no mow May is not a mandatory restriction of mowing. People seem to be confused about that. Rather, it temporarily suspends enforcement of the portion of the township code that requires grass and weeds to be no more than 6 inches high, and encourages people to hold mowing until later to give our local pollinators like bees, wasps, and other beneficial insects the chance to do their job. In the spring, as most flowers have not yet emerged, there is less food source available for pollinators. Plants such as violets, clover, and dandelions, that we may think of as weeds, provide an important early food source. Letting the lawn go unmown a bit longer also affords pollinators the shelter, resting, and nesting place needed for a head start. Because while a perfectly manicured, uniform-looking green grass lawn is the standard in America, the practice isn't only time-consuming and expensive, it's actually harmful to the environment and local ecosystem. As the organization Bee City USA explains, the traditional monoculture lawn lacks floral resources or nesting sites for bees and is often treated with large amounts of pesticides that harm bees and other invertebrates. When we think of habitat loss, we tend to imagine bulldozers and rutted dirt. But acres of manicured lawn are as much a loss of habitat as any development site. There are now about 40 million acres of lawn in the United States. That makes it the single largest irrigated crop in the country. But it doesn't feed nor sustain anyone, whatever your species. We're in the midst of what scientists are calling an insectageddon. The plight of our bees, butterflies, moths, and other vital pollinators is real and dire. And it directly affects other wildlife, such as birds, whose populations have plummeted in staggering numbers. North America has lost more than 1 in 4 songbirds in the last 50 years, nearly 3 billion birds gone since 1970. This is due to a number of causes, all human influenced, and habitat loss and insect decline are major factors. Terrestrial birds feed their young caterpillars. It's their sole food source. The young don't eat seeds. One chickadee, for instance, needs to feed their babies some 500 caterpillars each day. That's 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars needed to raise each clutch. Without insects, we have no birds. The loss of pollinator insects also directly and adversely affects the agriculture that we depend on. They pollinate crops that we rely on as food, as well as the pollination of other flora that we enjoy and need for biodiversity. Lawns are a recent development in the human history of altering our environment, but they no longer fit into the reality of the world we live in. Old habits die hard, but now we need to rethink how we think about our properties. If we continue to view our yards as extensions of our living rooms, with sterile carpets of manicured turf, rather than recognizing the existence and the needs of the many other species living outside the walls of our homes, and without widespread action on all our parts, many of these important insects, as well as other wildlife such as birds, face extinction within the next few decades. The No Mow May initiative has been proven to be extremely effective. Participating yards were found to have 3 times higher bee species richness and 5 times higher bee abundance than nearby parks that had been mowed. No Mow May will not solve the problem on its own, but it is a real step in supporting our pollinators while furthering habitat awareness and the central role pollinators play. Habitat loss and other threats to biodiversity are not just happening somewhere else. Our own yards are a major source of the problem. Making this very easy change can actually have a significant impact and help in curbing this very serious environmental problem. And I ask the township to follow the lead of other communities, such as the State College Borough, and to please take this step to implement No Mow May in Patton Township. And as we are already halfway through May, and if you take a walk around, you'll see that many neighborhoods are already implementing No Mow on their own and doing what they can. I ask that this be agreed to today, and as the initiative is not a mandatory instruction, but merely suspension of enforcement, and only means not fining people to the end of the month. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're using the same resources. That I agree with everything that Merrill has said, and I had prepared a similar presentation, but upon conversing with other members here, thought I would propose the idea that, talk about the difficulties of the timeline of coming up with the resolution. Okay, that said, I would actually like to propose.
Before you do.
Oh, sorry, Dan.
Madam
Thank
Chair, we have another person.
Thank you, Doug Mason.
Doug Mason, who wishes to address the board on this.
All right, Doug, I'm sorry. I can't see. You're more than welcome.
Okay. Hi. I just wanted to speak as a member of the Sierra Club, as the chair of the Sierra Club Machaning Group, that we're totally in support of the No Mow in May proposal. And I also want to speak as a Patton Township resident, as someone who sees a lot of benefit in this. We were talking in the previous agenda item about a pest, but here we're talking about millions of beneficial insects that are, for all intents and purposes, a good thing for us. So I just want to speak in favor of what Merrill said and what Betsy had prepared. And, the sooner the better, but, I understand, that you might have to work through the regular way of doing things and make it for next May. But anyway, the sooner the better. And I'm practicing with my lawn right now.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Doug. So if it's okay, does anybody else have a comment? Yes, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Joseph Lee. I live in Park Forest.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
What's that?
I just didn't hear your name.
Joseph Lee.
Thank you, okay.
Friends call me Joe. I live in Park Forest, and I have for the last 34 years. I am not in favor of No Mow May. I understand everything that was just spoken about by Merle. I have a beautiful lawn that I use organic fertilizer for. My wife and I just put in 240 annuals. We have about 15 or 20 perennials we put in, and we have probably another another 5 or 6 dozen perennials. We have a shade garden with approximately 50 hostas. We have flowers all over our property, and we have a beautifully manicured lawn. And our lawn doesn't have any mice in it, doesn't have any snakes in it, doesn't have any rats in it, doesn't have any moles in it. Some of the things that could potentially happen when you have long lawns. If the board is going to follow up what they say in their section 58.1, I'll read the bottom line here. All such vegetation is hereby declared to be a nuisance and detrimental to the health, safety, cleanliness, and comfort of the inhabitants of the township. So with that in mind, I certainly hope that the board cares about the health, safety, cleanliness, and comfort as an inhabitant of Park Forest. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay, what is the board's pleasure?
I'm sorry?
What is the board's pleasure, comments? Or
Yeah, I'd actually like to make another comment, or I'd like to
Okay.
finish my comment, I should say. Sorry, and I apologize that I haven't seen other people who wanted to speak. It's, I'm just having difficulty with my computer. And I see Susan. What I want to say, and I know Susan, or one of the Buddhists wants to speak, is that I'm actually going to propose that that the board ask the zoning officer not to enforce mowing this May. There are 5 people on this, or 4 people on the board. We're going to vote on that. I also want to point out, however, that the procedure is not, that if we take this action, whether we vote yes or no on it, it is not the normal procedure, and the normal procedure would have a longer opening, a longer setup time, so that people such as Joseph Lee would be able to come in and make comments, that they would have more time for that. And that the members of the board would have time to work with members of the community who have knowledge about this, such as Merrill David, Doug Mason, the Sierra Club, the borough, who's already implemented this, and come up with a resolution that is solid. It's something that people can react to either positively or negatively. So we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants right now. The purpose of a proclamation, and then ultimately, I believe it would be an ordinance, is, I believe it's twofold. One is to change behavior. And what is being proposed by the No Mow May, which has been set up in dozens of cities across the U.S., and as Merrill reported, there is evidence to support that it does increase the health, the number and the total count, as well as the species of pollinators, and that it does have a good impact on the environment. And I believe that is an impact that we need to encourage. The other purpose of such an ordinance, or certainly a proclamation, is to educate the public about the ordinance. The borough rolled this out with, they were ready with signs that would be put in the lawns, and it was contingent upon residents who want to follow the No Mow May to make a decision in that area to go to the borough and pick up a sign and put it on their yard. I think that there is concern that people will perhaps not mow their lawn simply because they don't want to do the work, which has a good end result, but has the likelihood of increasing negative attitudes about the whole policy and engendering negative feelings among neighbors. So that said, I guess Madam Chair, should we have Susan Buda speak? And the reason I jumped in before Susan, I know that she has important stuff to say, but I want to let everyone know that no matter what we do tonight, whether the board passes my proposal, which is to essentially ask the zoning officer to not enforce the mowing, we will have a year from now a proposal for this that will be given enough lead time so that we will be able to have a public hearing and so on that. So, Madam Chair, I turn it over to you to, I guess, call on Susan Buda. Thank you.
Okay,
For letting me jump in.
Susan Buda, would you kindly take the floor right now?
Thank you. Yes, I want to express my support of No Mow May, and also to just suggest a bit of a compromise, possibly, that some language could be included in the proposal to restrict enforcement or delay enforcement. Some language could be included that would say that if there is some kind of health or safety concern in a particular lawn, or if there's been a complaint from a neighbor, that possibly township officials could go and talk to the person who of that property and determine whether they are not mowing because of no mow May and encouragement of pollinators, or if there's other kinds of problems, or if they could maybe take care of one particular section, something like that. If that type of compromise would make others feel better about the no mow May, then I would be in support of that, and I'm in support of Betsy Whitman's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, Doug.
Yes, ma'am?
Since we have another township that has the no mow May, can we get some more information on their decision? So we're working together on this. Also, could we, before we make a decision, I know we're in May, could we push this to our next meeting to give us a little leeway that we can do a little more research?
We can reach out to the Borough State College and see what sort of process they went through. And I'm probably asked the solicitor to weigh in here. The requirement to mow when your lawn gets to 6 inches is in the code of Patton Township.
Okay.
To change that requires an ordinance. To ask a staff member to do something, well, let me just set up this scenario. Neighbor A calls the township because neighbor B's grass is 8 inches tall. At that point, it's the code enforcement officer who enforces this, not the zoning officer, but that's really irrelevant to the issue. Is the zoning or the code enforcement officer needs to follow the code of Patton Township and would have to cite neighbor B for having grass too long. Why or whatnot, there's nothing in the code that speaks to that. So to say, only in certain circumstances, or can staff go out and talk to them and find a compromise, really is asking staff to greatly exceed what their role is. I'm just going to suggest again that I think the best approach here would be to encourage people to do what they can. Remember that there is a 6-inch limit in Patton Township, and that we'll talk about this again starting early next year, and get plenty of time to get full input from lots of people and see what the preference of the community is.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Jim Payne has his hand raised to speak.
Jim, please.
Thank you.
one other consideration when you look at this next year for the no mow May, it might also be beneficial to extend or delay the spring leaf pickup. I don't take all the leaves out of the flower beds and stuff. And I read a lot of articles where you should leave them down until temperatures around 50 degrees, even at night, because you still have critters, chrysalis and stuff like that in the leaves. So you might look at that also next year as a possibility. And I do mow right now, I just don't mow low. And the dandelions are going like crazy, and even after I mow, there's still a ton of dandelions. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Betsy, do you still want to do your proposal? Or
I
would
think
you-
we're going to have the solicitor weigh in.
Oh, okay.
Or would we? Would
You
rather
know,
have
I think the manager's done a really great job of addressing
Okay.
the issues. It is a code, it's like any law. Your ordinances are essentially like statutes, except they're local. And so to not follow them, you have to take some kind of official action. I'm not familiar exactly what the borough did. I know in the past, speaking strictly about things like taxes, we have done some interim ordinances or resolutions which have gone through the official action process to extend. For example, I remember in COVID, we extended the discount period, or we basically said we weren't going to enforce the discount period until the end of June, I think it was. But in any event, we gave people more time, and they wouldn't have to, they could still get the benefit of the benefits under that code. But you would need to take some kind of official action tonight, and it doesn't sound to me like you're prepared to do that, in order for staff to do anything that is outside the code of ordinances. And to change that, you set them up for all kinds of issues when they go forward to enforce other matters that you might intentionally want to enforce. So I understand the interest. I fortunately live in a rural area and there's nobody next to me, so with all the rain we've had, I have trouble keeping it at 6 inches. But I think, you know, this is something to go out with a different approach next year early on and address all of these questions, do some public relations, and help folks understand that. If a community association wants to do something differently, they can, but they still have to acknowledge that the township has set these standards, and, you know, it may be something to look at as well. I just know that this always becomes a slippery slope, and we've dealt with this issue not with grass, although we have in the past. This board has dealt with issues where people have not mowed their lawns for a variety of other reasons, as I think one of the speakers mentioned. But it's no different than nuisance, because what I think is a nuisance, you don't, or vice versa, and it becomes a very fine line for us all to balance. So.
Okay. Thank you, Betsy.
Okay, so if I could make two comments and close out this discussion. One, I want to let everyone know that in the borough, they have a committee called, I believe it's called the Sustainability and Environmental Committee, which, as I said, vetted this proposal over a number of months. We are in the process of forming such a committee that will be in place for next year. The other point I'd like to make is I would suggest that we could unofficially, or officially by perhaps putting it on our website, have what I would call a mini mow May, and have an article on the, an item on the website that simply suggests that people raise the deck of their mower as they mow in May, or maybe mow every other week, as long as they stay within the 6-inch limit. And having this item on the website with information from Meryl that she presented, and maybe a graphic or two, would do the education for anybody who came to the website. Granted, people don't spend a lot of time probably clicking on the website, but it's there. And meanwhile, those people who have brought the proposal forward, Merrill, Doug, the Sierra Club, anyone else, simply start a neighbor-to-neighbor campaign of talking to people. Let's do a mini May. I'm certainly practicing that. My yard is full of dandelions, and because I choose not to use herbicide on it. So I don't know if we need a motion to that effect. We probably don't. I can just direct staff if the board
I'm
is
going to
in
ask, given the controversy, that the board provide direction to staff before we do anything.
agreement. Okay. Then I would
Would you be willing to
like to make a motion.
give direction to staff regarding that? I'm a true believer in educating our community, and that sounds good to me.
So I would,
They'll
Should I
take
make this in the-
year into getting everything in perspective.
you want it in the form of a motion?
Doug, do we need it? Can we just,
I'd like some more specifics about exactly what's going to get posted on the website.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be
No, I-
negative, but, I mean, we need to be very careful about how things are phrased. It needs to be clear that it's only suggestions. It's, you know, I don't even know that it goes to the level of recommend. I mean, is the board ready to say we recommend you that everyone do this or not? You know, words matter here.
Right.
So you know, like I said, I mean, if there's some, you know, materials that are purely educational, that say, you know, that we can provide links to, that's probably the best recourse. I would say, you know, here's, you know, and with a, you know, with a disclaimer that says the township will still enforce
Yeah.
our brush and leaf requirement, and, you know, nothing that's involved in this educational material should be taken as a directive or, you know, other than, you know, suggestions from people.
Doug, can I make a?
That's ineloquent, but that's the best I can do right now.
Doug, can I make a suggestion that you, Betsy Whitman, and Betsy Dupree, our solicitor, work on the wording, so we can have this, done correctly,
I'm willing to do that.
so we can move that.
And I
so
can
we
say-
move on.
Right away, I would put the emphasis on just the importance of pollinators, and then mention, you know, look at the flowers that are coming up in your yard. They're good for pollinators. You have to keep your grass mowed according to township ordinance, but, you know, just take a look at it.
Okay,
But I'm willing to do that.
Okay, so they got thumbs up from both the solicitor and the manager, so.
great, thank you. Moving on. Next on the
Pam,
agenda.
can I make a comment, and Sue Tom too, I think? Yeah. I'm with Doug on all of this. I mean, it's great to support No Mow May, but it's voluntary. I don't have any problem with an educational process, but I think it's premature for this year to have the board endorse a no mow May policy. We just haven't had the opportunity to have public hearings and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
I'll second.
having a little note on the township website referring to with some links and the kind of disclaimer that Doug has specified, that's fine. And we'll just have a note for the future that starting probably next March, will give us plenty of time. You'll have March and April. We can do whatever's necessary. I have a feeling that if the board in March supports a No Mow May effort, we'll have to change the code We'll have to have an ordinance that amends
I
the
think
code, the wording in the code to permit, a temporary enforcement of the requirement. But this year, no, we should leave everything the way it is and have no problem with an educational note on the township website.
Okay. Supervisor Magruder, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, nothing else to add. I support what Doug has mentioned.
Okay. Thank you all. Moving on, next on the agenda is the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month Proclamation. All righty. Patton Township APA Heritage Month Proclamation 2022, whereas Congress enacted a law in 1992 annually designating the month of May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month to celebrate the influence and contributions of those of Asian and Pacific Islander origin, the history, culture, and achievements of the United States. And whereas some Patton Township residents who hailed originally from the many diverse countries on the Asian continent and many Pacific islands are recent immigrants, and others are first, second, third, fourth, and fifth generation Americans. And whereas those Asian and Pacific Islanders origin are the largest racial minority group in Patton Township, making up 11% of the population, and have enriched the ethnic and social fabric of our township with their diverse language, cultures, and religious benefits. And whereas those Asian and Pacific Islanders origin contribute and enriched our communities with their creativity, enterprise, and skill as professors, scientists, technologists, doctors, students, entrepreneurs, artists, workers, writers, investors, elected officials, philanthropists, and more, building and supporting a vibrant and a resilient economy in Patton Township. And whereas the Asian and Pacific Islander origins are our beloved friends and family and cherished neighbors and valued members of Patton Township, where we remain committed to embracing and accepting all our residents from diverse backgrounds. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Patton Township Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim May 2022 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in Patton Township, and encourage all Patton Township residents to celebrate the history and culture of the Asian Pacific Islanders and Asian Pacific Americans and their vital contributions to our township, our county, our Commonwealth, and our country. Proclaimed this 11th day of May 2022 by the Patton Township Board of Supervisors.
Madam Chair, I second the motion.
All right. Now, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public safety.
Madam Chair, we had a question.
Oh.
Hand raised.
Your hand raised? I
Oh,
can't.
Nalini,
Oh, I
Krishnamurti.
can. Dr. Nalini, I'm so sorry. I couldn't see your hand.
That's all right. I don't know if it's appropriate for me to say a few words and thank you all for this.
Oh, please. Thank you.
So I do want to say, my name's Nalini Krishnamurti. I live in State College. And coming to the Patton Township Board of Supervisors meeting is beginning to feel like coming home now. Thank you all so much for passing this proclamation again in 2022. I know this is a tradition that it's something you did last year too, and thank you so much. I know some of what I've said you've heard before, but I just want to briefly talk about the APIDA community, if I may. And I know that all the supervisors already know about the Pan-APIDA Circle, which was formed in 2021 to counter increasing anti-Asian hate nationwide. And we've really been trying this past year to counter that increase by elevating voices, celebrating, APIDA joy, and doing just a lot of things locally. You might have seen recent reports that anti-Asian hate crimes sadly have increased 339% in 2021, and this is 339% over the record numbers in 2020. And while we've not had startling cases locally, this also spreads fear and racial trauma in APIDA communities everywhere, including in Center County. So to counter this, like the Pan-APIDA Circle, we've built a lot of networks locally with both APIDA community members and allies at events like Lion Bash. Last year, we handed out postcards on how to report hate and bias. And I know I shared this with the Board of Supervisors, but we got it translated recently with the help of State College Borough into 10 languages that are most in demand locally. And these are Spanish, traditional Chinese, simplified Chinese, Korean, Malay, Arabic, Vietnamese, Hindi, Russian, and French. And we would really love to work with all of you at Patton Township to help extend the reach of these postcards and get them into the hands of individuals who might need them. We've also created a lot of town and gown connections, mentored students, and spoken on panels organized at the first ever APIDA conference at Penn State. It was organized by Penn State students. They did a great job. We also spoke on a panel moderated by state high students. So our future is secure. These kids are just amazing. I also know that some of you have already visited the Belafonte Art Museum, where we collaborated with them to have an exhibit by local APIDA artists. The last day for this exhibit is May 29th, and it's called Into the Light, a tapestry of art and culture by local APIDAs. The last day for the Penn State Hub Gallery's Lunchbox Moments is May 15th, and this is an exhibit by Carlisle artist Amy Barnes, which showcases the lunch hour experiences of APIDA school children. This year, it's also been amazing to partner with SCLO Library. They're hosting events for children on May 15th and the 21st, and their book clubs are reading and discussing APIDA authors in May. The Belafonte YMCA is hosting a fun event on May 28th from 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m., and here you can interact with musicians as well as discover their instruments up close. And these will be musicians from the local Society for Indian Music and Art. And so I really request everyone in Patton Township to explore these opportunities. They highlight the journeys and experiences of the local APIDA community. I want to thank you all, and really thankful for all of you on this board as you consider local policies, and if there's any way we can assist you in creating a more inclusive community for all residents, we're happy to work with you, both in Patton Township and Center County. So just thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nanini. I just want to let you know, on our consent agenda, we do have the APPI protection that we will be voting on tonight as well. And I also would like to give credit to Police Chief Jolly, who also works with you to get that information out along with our board. We are totally committed to that effort. So thank you again. Moving right along here, we have public safety, the April 2022 police report, and talking about Police Chief Jolly, you're up. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So April 2022 was a very busy month in the police department. You'll notice we had 190 traffic stops. We wrote 55 citations, 2 parking tickets. Saw quite a large jump in criminal arrests, up to 34. Our bike officers rode 22 miles, did 48 business checks, and handled one incident, which was actually a drug arrest and a warrant service, and they did 2 vacation home checks. Under department notes, a 34-year-old male was arrested for burglary, criminal trespass, simple assault, and harassment. That male entered into an apartment that did not belong to him and physically assaulted the resident inside. A 57-year-old male was arrested for access device fraud, theft by deception, and theft of lost or mislaid property. That individual found a wallet that was left by accident in a shopping cart in one of our stores. That male took that wallet and then used a credit card from inside that wallet to make a purchase in another store. 47-year-old male was arrested for DUI, person not to possess firearms, and carrying a firearm without a license. He was involved in a minor motor vehicle accident. Our officers, while they were investigating, detected the odor of alcoholic beverage coming from that individual. Subsequently, he was arrested for DUI and was found to be in possession of a handgun. The male's criminal history prohibited him from possessing that firearm. That jump that I was talking about, you'll see we had 23 arrests made for retail theft. So just maybe a warning to the community, the loss prevention folks at the stores are really kind of amping up their efforts. So just be aware that they're out there and they're looking for shoplifters at our businesses in Patton Township. But we did see a pretty significant jump. You'll see in that number there. But we also made 2 arrests for driving under the influence, and 5 arrests were made for minor's law. Most of those 5, I think 4 of the 5 were individuals under the age of 21 possessing false ID, attempting to purchase alcohol. We successfully served 8 of the 13 warrants we attempted and conducted a total of 9 vacation home checks. I'm happy to report we did not use force during any of our incidents in April. Under community relations, Officer Sunderland installed 2 child safety seats for township residents. Officer Tuskovich, our school resource officer, spoke with the 7th and 8th grade students, social studies classes at Park Forest Middle School about the Bill of Rights and how it relates to law enforcement. He also attended the Spikes Fest at Medlar Field. Sergeant Albright participated in a national drug take-back event, which was held at Wegmans. We collected 19 pounds of unused and unwanted prescription medications, and those will be destroyed. And many of our officers assisted with the annual Penn State Blue-White football game. Training and department activities, our officers attended tactical response team training. We had 2 officers attend advanced investigative techniques training. 2 officers attended training on how to enhance officer wellness. 2 officers attended training on Pennsylvania search and seizure laws, and 3 officers attended training on our speed timing devices. All of our officers attended firearms range in the month of April. I attended a Sexual Assault Awareness Month event at the Center County Courthouse, meeting about the upcoming Police Officers Memorial Ceremony, a lunch and learn about medical marijuana law here in Pennsylvania. Alex and I actually attended the Graysdale Homeowners Association annual meeting, stepped in for Doug, and updated them on some of the happenings here in Patton Township development-wise and some of the things in the police department. And also the Patton Township Business Association lunch. I also worked with representatives from Center County to reinstall our ballot box. So just as the community knows, it is open, and we're right outside the doors at the main entrance here to the Township building. They're welcome to drop off their ballots. Real quickly, probably a good place to maybe mention it as well. I did quickly say about the Police Officers Memorial. That is a week from today. It's going to be held at noon on the courthouse steps in Bellefonte. Anybody is welcome to attend. It's a very somber ceremony as we recognize the officers who lost their lives in the line of duty from 2021. Unfortunately, that number is 617, which is very high. Around 400 of those are COVID related, and about close to 150, 160 or so were from other reasons. So again, anybody's more than welcome to attend. I will be there reading some of the names of the officers, and a couple other officers will be participating as well from our agency. We have our call list. You'll notice in the month of April we had 432 calls for service. That's up from the 386 that we handled in March. The majority of our calls were the health and safety EMS category. We had 67 of those. And then traffic-related incidents, we had 56. And then lastly, just again, trying to improve our transparency here. We included our arrest data for the first 3 months of the year, so January through the end of March. You'll see in the first chart, yeah, we have that up there. So on the left side, you can see the offense that was charged. The first page here is broken down by race. So we had 35 total arrests that were reported to the state in our summary reporting. 28 of those individuals were white, 6 were black or African American, 1 was Asian. The next page breaks down our arrests by gender. So of the 35, 22 were male, 13 were female. And then lastly, the last chart is by ethnicity. 1 was Hispanic or Latino, and 34 of the 35 were not Hispanic or Latino. So that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chief?
Madam Chair, Suton.
Supervisor Magruder, I'm sorry.
You're fine. Thanks for that report, Chief. Just a few follow-up questions. And so you had talked about the officers. This was since 2001 or 21?
That
That had died.
died in line, that's for 2021. So it's every year we recognize the officers from the previous year.
Okay.
So it's from January to December of 2021.
And that's the whole country,
That's
right?
the entire
The whole
country.
country,
That's
okay.
correct, yep. And all of the US territories as well. So,
Okay.
yeah,
And
yep.
then, so you said around 600 and then 400 were COVID related?
Around 400. I don't have the exact numbers. 617 is the total. Around 400-ish or so were COVID related. That's correct, yeah. So a large majority of them were COVID.
So I just think that's important for us to take stock of, to the intersection of health and law enforcement policing and how this has hit a lot of different communities. What are the most common items that are stolen? Do we have an answer for that?
Well, so the theft offenses, again, those are mainly from our department stores, so it runs the gauntlet. You know, years ago, I would have told you some of the items that were being taken were taken to pawn shops just for quick money turnaround. But we've seen cases where it's, you know, individuals taking food, we've seen baby items, but literally anything that you can buy at any of the stores, we've probably seen taken. So.
And I think that's sort of like at the forefront of my mind. I remember a while back reading articles about individuals stealing food, particularly for like baby formula and stuff like that, and knowing that there's a lack of that, a shortage right now, and how desperation sort of like happens, and just awareness that, you know, this disproportionately impacts, you know, different communities. And so obviously we want to be following the law and wanting to understand too what is sort of like precipitating these acts. And so I think just for awareness around that. And so, and also lastly, are individuals being caught within the department stores or outside of the stores?
Yeah, so generally, the process is most stores have their own loss prevention that works privately for whatever the store, the company is. They typically will attempt to apprehend the individual and bring them back into an office. Generally, that's when our officers get involved. We get a phone call from them saying that they have somebody that they had stopped. We come down, get the information from that loss prevention worker, conduct our own investigation to establish, make sure we have probable cause to make the arrest. On some occasions, folks are not willing to stay or to cooperate with that loss prevention worker. And we have told them in the past, and their companies surely have told them as well, they're not looking for a physical confrontation. So we ask them just to give us the best information they can give us, descriptions, if they get a license plate. You know, we obviously have, all stores have surveillance video, so a lot of times we'll use that to help identify folks if they have left. But we always hope that it's going to be something where they're cooperative and we can go down there and do the investigation and complete our incident right then and there.
So what I'm hearing is we will find you even if you leave the store.
That, we have a pretty good high success rate, so we will, yep.
Y'all heard that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any Supervisor Whitman? I see your hand.
Quick question. I didn't see a date, or I didn't remember the date of the memorial service at the courthouse.
It's
steps.
1 week from today, so the 18th.
Thank you.
At noon, and that's, like I said, at the courthouse in Bellefonte, right
Right.
in the front lawn there. So,
Okay,
yep.
thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, Chief, thank you. Next on the agenda is fireworks legislation. Is that you, Chief, or Doug?
Chief Jelly will do this.
Okay. So, actually, this is something Doug brought to my attention, but the Pennsylvania Municipal League provided an update on House Bill 2157. And just to give you a little bit of background first, back in October 30th of 2017, a new law was enacted, and that actually changed the Fireworks Act of 1939. It was repealed and replaced in its entirety. So that just changed here within about the last 5 years or so. But House Bill 2157 last month passed out of committee to the full House. It has bipartisan unanimous support, and it will clarify several aspects of the current law. It includes changes aimed at curbing the illegal use of consumer fireworks. One thing is that it moves the fireworks law from the tax code back to Title III, which is agriculture, where it was housed back before the 2017 change. Much of the underlying law remains unchanged. However, there are some positive changes aimed at curbing the illegal use of consumer fireworks, just a few of those. It adds clarifying language to prohibit the use of public property. It actually gives examples of what public property is considered: streets, parking lots, sidewalks, and most importantly, in my view, because we get this all the time, is parks. So quite frequently, folks will go out to Circleville Park. We've had them down in Green Hollow Park before, setting off fireworks. So it's nice for the state law to kind of catch up with that. In our ordinance, conduct prohibited in parks, fireworks is one of those things, but now the state law hopefully will be in line with our ordinance on that. Clarifies that the 150-foot rule, clearance rule, is from any structure or any vehicle. So that needed a little bit of tweaking. Consumer fireworks, which are the ones that individuals can purchase, use is curbed on most days of the year. Has language that prohibits the use between the hours of 10 p.m. and 10 a.m. Again, falling in line, our noise ordinance, we have an exception for fireworks, and 10 p.m. is the rule, except obviously on 4th of July and New Year's Eve as well. So that kind of, again, would fall in line with where we're at. We do get complaints, of course, of noise after 10 p.m. Not very many before in the morning hours of 9, maybe 9 or 10 o'clock, but that definitely the 10 p.m. would be something that's of note. And then a full 12% of the tax collected on consumer fireworks will be directed annually to public safety, as opposed to the current law, which has a $2 million cap. And for a little bit of perspective, in fiscal year 2020-2021, the revenue for consumer fireworks was $14 million. So quite a bit of revenue is being missed out there with the cap in the current law. So, but the bipartisan unanimous approval of the bill as it exited committee to us signals that there's going to be some traction here. It's going to continue to move forward. But this is just something that we wanted to bring to your attention and make sure you're aware of it, and we'll, I'm sure, keep you posted as any more changes come down the line. So.
Chief, I have a question.
Okay.
As the bill is moving forward, are we going to be able, is this a local, let our local residents know of the changes, or is this left up to the legislators?
I think once the bill is passed, we'll work with the state to give information out. One of the other items in the bill that this new bill would enable is we would be able to do to make some more restrictions at the local level. Areas like Park Forest Village, where obviously you can't get more than 150 feet away from a house anywhere in Park Forest Village. We can just put a blanket prohibition to consumer fireworks use in Park Forest, and I think that will really let residents know what they can do. I mean, there's other neighborhoods in the township obviously that are like that, so we'll have to do some more detailed look at it, but that'll probably be one of the things we'll come back and talk to the board about after this bill is passed. But we don't need to do anything now, just wait and see. It looks like it's heading towards passage, and once it is passed, then we'll come back to and talk to the board more, so.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Moving on, next is special events, noise waiver, and temporary use permit. Aircraft American Historical Racing Motorcycle Association. Doug?
Yes, we've looked at similar requests the last 2 years. This is the third year that we've looked at it. It has been approved in 2020 and 2021. We received no noise complaints last year. Sponsors are the Ashcraft family who reside out along Buffalo Run Road. They have several hundred acres of property out there, and as I noted, they've held this event the last couple of years. They submitted all the information that the township requested, and staff would recommend again that the noise waiver with specific, the waiver would apply from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. on June 10th, 11th, and 12th. Staff would recommend that the board take action to approve that and also approve temporary use permit. Those can be done in one action. We do have, if anyone has questions, we do have, we have Lisa Ashcraft available on Zoom if anyone has questions.
Madam Chair?
Okay, I see Supervisor Whitman has a question.
Yeah, well, I would just like to move that we accept the manager's recommendation that we approve the noise waiver.
I'll second the motion.
All right, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Did someone have a question?
Who's for the next item?
Oh, sorry.
Is there a question? I can't see.
No, sorry. Nope.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes. And thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Next on the agenda is public works. There are no items. Moving on, next on the agenda is engineering, planning, and zoning. The Planning Commission report, Robert Prozac, Commission member of the Planning Commission. Update.
Good afternoon, and you should see my lawn. Is it a beauty? The Planning Commission received a map from Ferguson Township, their updated map, and since it's their map, I mean, we had no comments on it, but we thank them for sharing. That, you know, they didn't have to do it, but they did, and they don't encroach on us in any way, so that's good. The Planning Commission has a member on the Patton Township Housing Task Force, and right now they're engaged in contacting other college towns to see how they're handling the housing problem, which the commission insists on calling a challenge. The basic idea is to see or get ideas about how other college towns are working with the housing needs of the community. Then the Planning Commission spent an inordinate amount of time, and we're still not finished, on ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And our purpose in tackling that is to inform the public about what they should expect if they decide to build one of these. Now, they can be attached to an existing structure, detached from it, above ground, below ground, remodeled garage. All of those fall into the category of accessory dwelling units. And we want to make sure that the public knows what they're dealing with should they decide to put one of these on their property. And so we're still not done with it. We will be talking about it again at our next meeting. And then if things go according to form, we will pass it to you and you will pass it back to us, and we will futz around, and then we'll pass it to you and you'll pass it back. And this will go on for a little while. And eventually we'll come to an understanding about what's expected. And again, that's our purpose, is to inform the public about what they can expect should they decide to put one of these in. The first thing that we made absolutely clear is that each of these ADUs must comply with existing codes. You can't use tar paper walls for outside walls. You have to have the structure meet all of the codes, including setbacks. And that's important because the setback may limit the amount of space you have for one of these ADUs. We're also contemplating how to inform the public about this. We're either going to do send out a survey or have an open house, one or the other, but it's not quite fair to make all these regulations and then not inform the public of it. As I say, we're still not finished with this. Our last item that we took under before we adjourned, and believe me, we put a lot of time in on this. It interfered with my dinner. It was really bad. Lot size. That is, should we put limits on that? And basically, the township zoning regulations will determine what the lot size is. Right now, it looks like it's going to be something like 1,000 square feet. No, that's Harris Township. We're looking at 600 to 800 square feet. So the size is pretty well determined. We still have things to discuss, like parking and the quantity. How many of these can you have? And that's, given the setbacks that are required, probably no more than one. But, if you could put one below ground by remodeling your basement and remodel your garage and put one there, so you could have more than one, conceivably. And again, we will be talking about this again at our next meeting, and then we will pass our recommendations on to you at that time.
Thank you,
Any
Robert.
questions?
Is there any supervisor that would like to ask Robert questions at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to thank the Planning Commission again for all of the hard work and thought that you're putting into this.
That's what we get paid for.
Us too. No, but really, it's, I know it's a big, heavy lift, and it's going to make an incredible difference.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we hope to. Okay. All right, then. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Bob.
Clearly, I need to get to know people.
All right. Moving on, next on the agenda is the Capital Improvement Plan Project, PW-42, Valley Vista Drive, sidewalk from Carnegie to Sheets. Alexander?
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Of Engineering, Planning, and Zoning.
Oh, I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, no problem. Just want to give you your props.
Thank you. So this item is concerning the Capital Improvement Plan Project, PW-42, which is Valley Vista Sidewalk from Carnegie to Sheets. Wanted to first bring to light that there are two existing ways to get to Sheets from the interior of Park Forest. The first one is the aqua-colored path. If you can see that on my screen with my hand running over it, that is currently a 3-foot wide gravel path that goes down through clearing in the woods down to the Sheets parking lot. The yellow line is actual sidewalk that is along Galen Drive that you can follow to a piece of sidewalk parallel to North Atherton Street, which, as noted in the agenda, both of these options that are parallel to North Atherton have some ADA concerns, but they both do lead to the Sheets parking lot. So, according to the board agenda, the purpose of this agenda item is to see if the board is satisfied with these current options and the $90,000 allocated for the construction of the new path on Valley Vista could be utilized for a different project. If the board would like to see one of these two existing paths upgraded to meet ADA standards, the anticipated cost would not exceed $20,000. Or if neither option 1 or 2 are acceptable, I recommend we do a public input process prior to undertaking a new sidewalk construction project. So at this point, I am here to answer any questions or gather any input that you have.
Okay, any supervisor?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Trevino?
I'm not sure how to present this, but I'm going to ask you a question, Madam Chair, Pam Robb, since this was one of your interests.
Yes.
I wasn't aware that the yellow line, that there was an actual sidewalk all the way to Sheets. I knew about the blue line, which is, it's like a unimproved right-of-way. It's just full of, it's a ditch. It has rocks and, I mean, it's.
Yes.
Gravel path.
It's not really a path.
Oh.
It's just an open right-of-way that goes down. There's no woods there, but it's very, very difficult. I actually tried to walk it once, several years ago. But I didn't realize there was also this yellow line sidewalk. So the question I have for you, Madam Chair, is have you tried this walking to Sheets via one of these two ways from Galen Drive?
I wasn't aware of the one with the yellow line, which is the sidewalk. I refused to go the one that was blue, and just in case I fell down in that area, nobody would have found me.
Right.
I will now like to just get back to Alex and try the yellow line, the yellow pathway, where there is sidewalk, just to see. And then if that's possible, then they can pull my recommendation.
I think what Alex has pointed out, that there's a steep grade issue. How steep is the grade?
So to meet ADA requirements, 5% grade is the cutoff, and say that there's, I think I wrote in here, 65 feet of it's over between 5 and 8%.
5 and 8%.
Yeah.
That's still walkable, but it's a wheelchair would be a problem.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, there need to be either some landings and probably maybe a switchback or two, or some guide or handrails installed. If we wanted to make those improvements, we could work with Sheets to get those installed to make it fully ADA compliant.
And when you say work with Sheets,
Well, it's on, the sidewalk's on their property, so, we would be making the improvements to the sidewalk on their property, and then, once the improvements are made, they'd be responsible for maintaining them thereafter. So if we installed a handrail and 10 years from now need to be replaced, it would be Sheets' responsibility.
I didn't really ask for some time.
Sutan?
Thank you.
Sorry.
Are there grants to pay for any of this stuff? This is my naivete, but as I think about like making things ADA compliant, if we're putting in sidewalks to reduce sustainability stuff so people aren't having to drive to the store, are there grants out there so taxpayers aren't?
Not for this sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Betsy, Supervisor Whitman had her hand up.
This person.
Okay. Supervisor?
Sure, thanks. I would just like to remark that there may be people who live on Carnegie Drive in the north side of Valley Vista, and then on Galen Drive, that neighborhood, who might also want to access Sheets walking. And right now, they would either have to, if they wanted to cross at a light, they would go all the way down to North Atherton and then backtrack, and they probably wouldn't do that. Or they could, of course, cross at the intersection with Carnegie Drive and Valley Vista, then they'd have to walk down on the grass, so they might not do that, so.
There is, well,
But then they'd have to.
there is a
Oh,
crossing at the Sheets driveway there in front of Lowe's. There's a marked crossing.
Oh,
You
you're
can't see
right.
it on, yeah.
Oh, you're right, you're right.
So-
I forgot about that. That's a nasty place to try and cross, though. It's a nasty place to try and drive.
Yeah.
Anyway, I liked your idea, Alex, of surveying people. And I'm suggesting that we would also somehow survey people who live on Carnegie Drive north of Valley Vista and the Galen Drive area to see if there are any people who would walk. I mean, there's this old, what comes first? Do you build a sidewalk and then they come? And if you survey them and they say, no, I don't walk there, are they going to say it's because there aren't any sidewalk? So if there's some way that you can tease that out, if there were a sidewalk, would you run? Would you walk? Just a thought.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. No, it was great overall research on that.
Well, I have to say, Susan Wheeler helped me with it. I forgot to mention that when I was.
Say what?
Susan Wheeler helped me put this together. I
Oh,
should have
good,
mentioned that in the beginning.
Yeah.
So,
No, she's great at that.
yes.
Yeah, but good mentor.
Well, will you please thank Susan and Alex? I want to thank you both for your presentation, and, I'm with the survey.
I think
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Magruder had a comment, I believe.
Oh, sorry. Supervisor Magruder, I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, just one curious, what the response rate how long would this process take, collecting these survey responses? And thinking about the survey response rate, like, how likely is it that we're going to actually get something sufficient enough that's going to be representative to move forward with this? Or would it just be more beneficial to move forward with this now? A lot of questions, but just don't want to delay this if we're not actually going to get a good response rate. We've done research already.
Typically, if we get a 25% response rate for something like this, that would be pretty high. So it's going to be the people that are most interested in the issue will be responding. I'm going to say probably the last time we did a lot of this was with the President's Drive, Tofteries Avenue, President's Drive intersection. I think you'll get a lot of it depends. It's probably going to take some time for staff to put a good survey together. It's important to think thoroughly about how you ask the questions to make sure you're getting good information we can act upon once we have them, so that it's probably take a little bit of time to put together this survey to see to see what exactly questions and how we want to phrase them, to make sure we see what we can get back and see see what looks forward. So I think Betsy talked about surveying. I think Pam talked about surveying, and Sutan. So I take it it's the consensus of the board, more or less, to move forward with item 3 then?
Yes.
That's not.
Is that correct?
That wasn't mine.
Okay, so then I guess I'm looking for clear direction from the consensus from the majority or the consensus of the board on how we move forward.
Because I'm thinking if we've already done research, there's a good plan for this. I don't want to delay this process if there's a need right now for this to happen, and if it's going to take a long time to get survey responses and then.
It'll probably take, I'm going to say probably 3 months before we had something to bring back to you.
Which is short. So we really haven't done the research on this. We haven't done any research, except that we've just drawn some maps and indicated what's out there, but we don't know what the need or the interest is.
Yeah, we're talking about $90,000, so I agree. Let's do the survey,
It's
and
government.
get some more information, and Pam and Alex are willing, take a walk, walk that loop, that yellow line loop all the way to Sheets and see if that's a reasonable existing walkway that maybe only just needs some improvement for wheelchair access. It'd be a lot cheaper than constructing a whole brand-new sidewalk along Valley Vista from Carnegie Drive to Sheets. On the residential side, because there's already a sidewalk on the, on the Lowe's and the movie theater side. There is a sidewalk there. Someone from the south side of Valley Vista could actually cross the street, take that sidewalk, and then cross Valley Vista again to get over to Sheets. So there is a ADA accessible
Correct.
Sidewalk that's there, but it's inconvenient to cross the street twice, Valley Vista Street twice to use it. So, yeah, let's get more data, more information.
And let me explain to Sutan, my reasoning is, when I brought it up, it's exactly what Supervisor Torino was talking about. You know, those of us who live on Galen would have to cross over Valley Vista to walk down, then to try to cross over where the walkway was, with people coming out of Sheets making that left turn, could be very dangerous. You know, and because of Alex and Susan's research, I now have another path I can look at. And I'm looking forward to walking that yellow path where the walkway is, and to eliminate the sidewalk issue. If that's viable, you know, all we need is to talk with Sheets, which is the number one piece, is to have conversation with Sheets. Would they be willing to work with us? You know, I don't see why they wouldn't, because that would be more customers for them. And the survey is still within a time frame where we're walking. You know, it's the end of August. Fine. So I look forward to the survey and doing the walk. Okay?
Yeah, provide me some feedback of what you think of the walk when you do it.
Okay.
I've got one other question.
Okay.
Right here. So I'd just offer the suggestion that maybe changing that crosswalk to I don't know what the term is, but adding piano keys to it to make it more visible.
The one on Valley Vista?
The one in Valley Vista that crosses at the entrance of Sheets.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Move on now. Any other questions? Any other feedback? Okay, Alex, thank you so much. Moving on is the Center County Draft Transportation Improvement Plan 2023 to 2026. And Alex, that's you again.
Yes, it is. So the CCMPO has a draft TIP right now, Transportation Improvement Plan, for the years 2023 to 2026. Also, they have an air quality conformity report. These are currently available for review until Monday, May 30th, 2022. I checked the draft TIP, and there are currently no Patton Township projects on the TIP, but if you would like to provide comments to the MPO, again, the deadline is Monday, May 30th. This item is for information only. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're down to number 7, administration, management of the single-use plastic bags. Supervisor Whitman.
Right, let me just get my notes up here. Okay. All right, so I'm excited this is finally on the agenda. We happen to have Laura Fowler here. She ready to speak, and I'm going to turn it over to her after a brief introduction. So Professor Fowler is the Assistant Director for Outreach and Engagement at the Institutes of Energy and the Environment. And as an attorney and mediator, she focuses on environmental and natural resource law, and she has a number of specialties. She teaches a class. This year, her negotiation and dispute resolution design class. Her students tackled the issue of single-use plastic bags in the Center region. Township, and I'll note that Patton Township, along with Ferguson, the Borough, State College, we have all been discussing the management of single-use plastics since 2018. In 2019, the students in the same law class actually worked with Ferguson Township to examine the likelihood of a ban on plastic bags and/or a fee structure, and if that would discourage the use of single-use plastics. But then in 2019, just as Ferguson was getting ready to act on this, the borough was considering it, the Pennsylvania State Legislature imposed a moratorium on such local ordinances concerning plastic bags. The moratorium expired in 2021, and so now we have Professor Fowler and her class back on the scene, and I'll turn it over to her. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome, Dr. Fowler.
Thank you, and thank you, Supervisor Whitman and Madam Chair. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen, but before I do, I'm sharing the same slides that I shared with both Ferguson Township and the Borough of State College. I realize that those presentations have run a little bit long, so I'm going to try and give you the highlights. I have shared with Supervisor Whitman the whole slide deck. There's quite a bit of information on the slide deck. And they're cross-linked so that you can look at what we're referring to. I'm also working with, actually, my teaching assistant at this point to finalize a report to give all of this information back to you in a report form. So with that, I will share my screen, walk you through, but hopefully I'm happy to answer any or all questions that you might have. Share the screen, make this big. Can you see the full slide deck here? Great. So as Supervisor Whitman said, my negotiation and dispute resolution design students were part of actually a Sustainable Communities Collaborative project. And the idea is Penn State matches community needs with students and a course experience. A picture of some of my students negotiating this semester. I had 36 students, including 22 international students and 2 students from the School of International Affairs, 13 countries represented. You can imagine that most of them, many of them had no idea that we have a whole set of local governments in this area. The goal of the class overall is to think about negotiation and dispute resolution design systems to keep people out of litigation, really, but also to find better ways of resolving disputes. And part of the reason that I often will work with the Sustainable Communities Collaborative project is to help them think through how these issues play out in the real world. Betsy mentioned that this did build off the project in Ferguson Township in 2019. In 2018, Ferguson Township residents had put in a petition basically asking for a ban on single-use plastics, 25-cent fee, education at the point of sale, 6 months to implement the program. At the same time, that petition was actually also submitted to the Borough of State College. It was focused on single-use plastic bags. They held a hearing, they requested assistance in 2019. We worked on it in the spring of 2019, actually interviewing quite a few people in Ferguson Township, talking with people, doing background research. And just as they were trying to figure out what to do, a ban on bans came through as a piece of language in a budget bill at the end of the Assembly session. So that kind of put a halt to things for a little while. This project in Ferguson Township reached out and then talked further with the Borough of State College and then also with Patton Township is the request I think was, let's think more about a regional solution versus community by community implementation, right? This is a broad area. Again, people don't know where the boundaries between different communities are. And let's think about potentially more than just plastic bags, but think about writ large different kinds of plastic, being straws, stir sticks, beverage containers, plastic cutlery, or other kinds of takeout containers. So there's been a lot of change since 2019. The statewide moratorium has ended. There are 6 Pennsylvania communities that have taken action, Philadelphia, for example, but also Pittsburgh, most recently, just early in April. There's an increasing understanding of the impacts of plastics local to global. Recently here in Center County, there was a survey that came out last year that basically said they found microplastics in all Center County waterways, and this one details 4 in particular. This is microplastics that we don't have an easy way of getting out in our water treatment systems, and so they are things that we are ingesting. So concerns about that. Linkages between waste management and climate action with the Center Council of Government's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan references waste and waste management, and I'll loop back to that in a moment. So our role in this project was to gather information and do interviews, right? We were just trying to bring information to you to think about how others might have used single-use plastics, who's potentially interested in this region, what are their interests or concerns, and then what might be considered for single-use plastics. Our role is not to make a recommendation. We were gathering information and we were giving it back to you, where the local communities then decide if and how to proceed and whether and what to adopt a more uniform or regional approach. We're really focused here, and so part of what I'm doing again tonight, and I have briefed Ferguson Township and the Borough of State College, is this, giving you information back. So one option that communities have taken is just continue to follow a voluntary approach. You see it here locally, for example, Wiscoy collects plastic bags and then reuses them, but there's also other approaches. Trader Joe's, for example, you can only get paper bags, or some charge a fee already. For example, if you go to Aldi and go shopping, you have to buy a bag. They don't just give them to you. On the Penn State campus, there's another example of a voluntary approach where they've had an eco-coin program. I was actually just in there today and I didn't see it in operation, but it used to be that if you came in, you did not take a bag, for example, when you bought something at the bookstore, they'd allow you to make a donation to one of 3 different local nonprofits. So there are other examples like this. This is largely what we've been doing to date. And I think that's one of the things that you could consider is continuing to take this voluntary approach. Second approach is adopt a fee. The fees that we saw generally ranged from about 5 cents to 20 cents a bag for a single-use plastic bag. Lots of ways to do this. For example, retailers could create a form where they uniformly agree upon a fee. You could impose a fee where retailers must agree upon a fee within a certain range. You could impose the same fee for all retailers or combine the fee with free reusable bags. Maybe you have an ordinance that says that's tailored up to a certain amount. If you consume X number of bags a year in certain places in Europe, then you are required to adopt some sort of management fee. All of these approaches rely on public education. This is an example from the city of Edwardsville, Illinois, that might be at the point of checkout to alert people that they needed to be paying a fee starting at a certain point. Third option, you can prohibit the use of certain products. Many bag bans in particular have resulted from community action or the focus on this. Most were implemented by town votes, committees, or local legislation. At this point, there are 10 states, the most recent just enacted in May, that have outright prohibited the use of single-use plastic bags in particular. In contrast, there are 18 states that have a ban on bans with preemption of any type of local action. Interestingly enough, Colorado is about to switch from a ban on bans to enacting a bag ban and kind of reversing it at almost a 180. Numerous countries have in fact banned single-use plastic bags. I was surprised that Bangladesh was the first in 2002. Canada is the most recent country, just this past year. And a large range of what is regulated. You can read faster than I can talk. So this is a map that I think is really interesting. You can go in and explore. Again, the reason I'm giving you the links is this is worth exploring of how different areas have dealt with this. A citywide ban on plastic bags is the yellow, which you can see the range in approaches. And I would say there's kind of a first generation approach, which is a ban on certain types of bags, and then a second generation approach, which I'll talk more about here in a moment, which is kind of a combination of things. The National Conferences of State Legislatures has an excellent set of summaries for how different states have approached this question. Fourth option may be a combination. Again, this is maybe more the second generation, where it may be that you limit the use of single-use plastic carryout bags, the thin filmy bags, and you may charge a fee for paper bags or thicker recyclable or reusable plastic carryout bags. And then if you've got compostable bags, Washington State is basically saying it's up to the retailer what they want to do with this. Considerations for this region. For here, plastics is very much part of our local waste stream. We ship 18 tractor trailers a day of waste to the Elk County landfill. Of that, about 50% of it is waste materials. We require recycling, but for a variety of reasons, again, a huge amount of our waste going still is recyclable material. We do have separate plastics collection, and you can see in the lower left picture the miscellaneous plastics that are captured and baled. But this is more challenging with the ban from China in 2017. The market's much more limited. There's also products that have no market whatsoever. Plastic bags can be recycled by customers. In the upper right picture, you can see an example of that. However, 87% of bags across the country are not recycled at all, or about 32 billion pounds of plastic film produced in the US, so 87% of that probably not recycled. There is an updated state waste characterization study that has been accomplished. It is not yet available. Last time this was done was almost 15 years ago. So this is just a quick snapshot of the 3 communities we're working with. Again, just kind of giving a sense of where things stand with each of these communities. And I think what I would say from the interviews we've done is each of these residents and people we've interviewed in each of these 3 communities are interested in seeing something going forward. And there is an opportunity for a regional approach. Our students also researched a number of other jurisdictions just to see what they were doing. We were looking for what was the jurisdiction, what action did they take, how did they define what they were regulating, did they exempt something, how did they make a transition or implement something, how have they operated the program, what sort of enforcement might they have, what happened with COVID, and then anything else notable. This is a list of what we've looked at, a number here in Pennsylvania, but also kind of broadly across the country, different states, different countries. I had about 8 students from Uzbekistan, which is why you see that in the list. And I thought it might be interesting for people to know how they're handling it in a country quite different from here, and then a couple of businesses. We will include short summaries, basically 2-page summaries of each of these entities that we researched in the report that we're giving back. That was my request to the students, was cross-link it, reference it, and make it short so that you could see what different communities have done. So some key questions that I will give back to you is what is regulated? And this is coming from these other jurisdictions, right? Examples of what has been regulated elsewhere could be a single-use plastic bag. Sometimes it's by thickness or if it has a handle. Maybe it's a non-recyclable paper bag at the point of sale. Maybe it's single-use silverware, plastic straws or stirrers, styrofoam, plastic ring carriers. And interestingly, Hawaii is actually considering a ban on single-use plastic bottles. Example definitions often look like this, right? It's based on weight, 2.25 mils, thick or created in a certain way. Or maybe, again, a definition, this is for polystyrene, the styrofoam. Again, you can read faster than I can read and walk through. But who is regulated? Another really key question, right? Is it by the type of store? Is it a convenience store, a grocery store? Do you do it by the size? It can be really broadly defined. This particular definition from New York includes sidewalk sales, farmers markets. Other places, as you can see in the first one for Pittsburgh, exempt places like dry cleaners or pharmacies. And there's often exemptions by type of user. For example, if you have somebody who's receiving federal food stamps through the SNAP program or Women, Infant and Child program or other state or federal program beneficiaries, there's often an exemption written in there for charging somebody a bag fee, for example. Boston basically said, look, if you need more time to use up existing stock, let us know. Most programs include some sort of time period for that kind of transition. Potential exemptions, there's lots of them, and this has come up quite a bit in the interviews, right? Maybe it's a bag used to package loose items like fruit, vegetables, etc. Maybe it's for frozen foods, meats, fish, flowers. Maybe it's to carry bakery goods, takeout bags, lunch wagons. I'm giving you Hawaii's set of exemptions to kind of see how broad it can be. Pharmacists, newspaper bags for home delivery, door hanger bags, laundry, dry cleaning, or garment bags, bags for garbage, pet waste, or yard bags, live animals, fish or insects sold at a pet store, chemical pesticides or other caustic materials. So every single law we've had an exemption of some sort. This one have a little bit broader than some other ones. Program implementation is a really big concern. Some places started with a fee and then went to a big ban of plastic bags and then expanded as regulated. A real mix in what we were seeing. Usually, again, there was a phase over time. Just checking that you can still hear me. My internet is slightly unstable. Okay. Usually 6 to 18 months, both for education, but also time to use up the existing stock. Example from Vermont, you can sort of see what how they phased it in over time. Education, in every place, required signage, et cetera. This is an example from the city of Davis, California, where you can see this is what this applies to, this is what it does not apply to. These bags are still free. If you have questions, here's where to go. If fees are charged, for example, it took a little bit of time for people to implement basically that you were being charged and what you were being charged for on the receipt. So Narberth, Pennsylvania has a plastic bag carry charge for 10 cents a plastic bag fee, and that would show up on your receipt. As a side note on the fee, it commonly was returned to the retailer to offset maybe more expensive costs, but that was some variation in what we saw in different communities. Some communities actually put some towards an environmental fund. I think that's a question to figure out. Enforcement, failure to comply, big range in this, ranging from $50 to $500 for a violation usually charged against a business that was in violation. California, I think, was the highest we saw at about $5,000 a day for third or subsequent violations. Washington, D.C. has an example where their Department of Energy and Environmental staff will go out and inspect businesses and pretend they're customers so that they're not treated differently from anybody else. A non-compliant business would be issued a notice of violation, come into compliance. From there, it would ramp up, and you can see what's possible there. So they have the local watershed restoration fund, and so they're trying to keep track of the taxes as well. It's another implementation thing to think of. COVID impacts, I'll come back to that in a little bit, but lots of different places had their programs planned and or delayed or rolled back because of COVID concerns. Impact of the laws, it very much depended on how the law was set up, but people did see measurable reduction of single-use plastic bags being used in stores, in waste streams, in waterways, and as litter. This site here, it has a great number of different examples around the world of what was implemented where it was, the summary of what happened. This is an example, though, from San Francisco in 2007, where they basically implemented a ban on plastic bags only for large supermarkets. And they found that actually people switched to offering paper bags and or thicker plastic bags. And it really didn't have the impact that they were looking for. Chicago tried the same thing and then added a 7-cent tax or fee, and they saw a decrease of 40% in the use of that. And the number of customers bringing their own reusable bags increased by 2.5 times. Same thing with Suffolk County, New York, a little bit better. They actually just did a fee all the way through on both plastic and paper bags and saw bag use overall decrease by 82% for plastic and 79% for paper. So a big change in behavior, a more recent implementation. There are unintended consequences for this. Surfrider Toolkit down in the bottom left actually details some of these, and I found it to be quite a useful resource. But a ban on certain types of bags without a fee may, again, result in the use of thicker bags and more impact from plastics, not less. A ban plus a fee seemed to make a difference, or just simply a fee on all the bags or type of plastics that you were trying to decrease the use of. Smaller fee was less effective. The Surfrider Foundation, again, recommends about 10 cents per bag. The range that we saw, again, was from 5 to 20 cents. Most common, probably around 10 or 15 cents. Litigation can result from this. New York did have some litigation. It was recently dismissed for a statewide ban to go forward. And a community's impact can make a difference overall. I think it's interesting because if I'm understanding correctly, local communities in New York State enacted regulations, then the state enacted regulations, and this is coming here very soon. By the end of the year, Wegmans actually, which is New York based, is going to be no longer offering plastic bags by the end of this year, I think because of supply chain question throughout the whole store. Student interviews, we talked with a lot of people. Our questions were, kind of broad. What were your perspectives on single-use plastic bags? Do you use or manage single-use plastic bags? If so, how? Thoughts on how they should be managed? Does COVID impact you? Anything else you'd like to share with local officials and anybody else we should talk to? We have talked with, we reached out to about 70 different people or groups. Some declined, some didn't want to answer. We interviewed about 35 people. This is not a scientific study, but was just trying to get a sense of what was on people's minds. A couple of my students actually walked into restaurants and talked to people. So some of these names were provided to us by the different jurisdictions we were working with, and some of them we just reached out to try and get a broader sense of people who might not respond directly to us without kind of being cold called, if you will. So handful of overall themes very quickly here. There was fairly wide recognition that plastics are causing a problem. Some people really hadn't thought about it as an issue, but most had. Others know there's a problem, but don't know what to do about it. A sense of urgency varied quite a bit, from we should have done something yesterday to we need more education and study. Some would like education and voluntary measures. Others were like, no, we need to actually take action here, a fee or abandon a fee and move forward on this. Even amongst those who recognized that there was a significant challenge with plastic, the concern about cost and effectiveness of replacement products was really significant. And I like this quote because I think it illustrates this, which is what has turned from a convenience into a pollution and economic challenge, but it's so ingrained in our society that moving away from those habits is hard. So some of what we heard is, how do you change behavior? Education is really crucial. People said, we need to think about the long-lasting impacts from cradle to grave, from fossil fuels to the disposal of this, local impacts to fish and wildlife to the global impacts of ocean and waterways, impacts to health, the lack of markets, the idea that plastics are downcycled to lesser valuable products if they're recycled at all, and that we're all dependent on the environment in a larger circle. A lot of questions about alternatives. Again, I'll come back to that in a moment. And a lot of need for education about any new programs. Why are we managing something different? What's a retailer or business need to do? How do we manage this, particularly for poor or populations or jobs? What's the effect of the program over time? How do we monitor that? Range of interests and needs, from corporations to food production to visitors to restaurants. Again, how do we recognize that lots of people are affected by how plastic moves through our system? Need to think about different audiences, right? Consumers, maybe students or seniors, those on fixed budgets, businesses, attendees at something like an event. And again, I'm not going to go through all these details because it's more than I want to talk through. I will give you these slides later, and we'll give you the report with this documented as well. There was an interest in regional and integrated approach. A couple people noted, look, if some jurisdictions actually adopt an approach, particularly if they do so in a coordinated fashion, it may lead to other communities that may have thought less about this to also take action. Integrated solutions are needed within organizations from the top to the bottom. If a regulation is adopted, a number of businesses basically said, look, we'll figure out how to comply. Just tell us what we need to do. Several people noted that this is much more than just plastic bags. Something like straws or stirrers are easy. There's wood or paper alternatives. Plastic or styrofoam containers versus biodegradable, we think is a little bit more challenging, particularly given the increase in takeout because of COVID. And the question was asked, if these are charged to pays, is it a business? Is it the individual? Where does the money go to? Some alternatives, people want to see alternatives, but they want to know that they're actually better for the environment and people. Need some alternatives to think about it, need to really understand the costs of what those alternatives are. Are they good enough to keep your food from falling out onto the sidewalk? Can they keep them hot or cold? Starbucks, interestingly enough, is about to try and get rid of its cup as it's been known. They don't quite know what they're going to replace it. So there is effort amongst the broader business world to think about this and to deal with what you're trying to do, which is carry a hot beverage, for example. Frontline managers do have ideas about alternatives, but they also, again, have to follow what management tells them. If we make a switch to something like compostable takeout containers, we want a system for breaking it down, right? How do we actually handle that and not just keep throwing stuff away? Some incentives, are they incentives through the system for manufacturers to think about because there's so much plastics in packaging? What are business incentives to really think about reducing plastic that they're using? And then what can consumers do? What are the alternatives that they may be able to choose? Education, transition, and enforcement. I've touched on this a little bit, that there needs to be education. Again, this is from the interviews of helping people think about making these changes. And maybe there's opportunities for partnering with businesses to make more systematic change. Like we saw in the looking at other jurisdictions, there is a need for a transition. And there's a need to think about enforcement staffing challenges, particularly when we have already got staffing challenges in many different places. A lot of people were concerned about the impact on more mom and pop type merchants across the region, figuring that the larger chain stores may have more of a system for handling it already. Impact of COVID, lots of questions. Less emphasis on managing plastics during the last 2 years, a lot of volumes of plastics, including personal protection In the waste stream, I offer you a little bit of garbage poetry, I guess. Masks like autumn leaves in the parking lot was one from one interviewee. Higher usage of single-use plastics is an example quote from one of the interviewees. More takeout orders, supply chain issues. This was interesting, again, that it really impacted your ability to get plastic bags, but it made them more affordable than paper alternatives, right? So cost and availability were both playing out with COVID supply chain questions. People had phased out plastic bags, but had to bring them back. Waste management was another theme. Again, what can we actually really do with this? The idea that earlier I mentioned or had a quote about wish cycling. People say they want to do it, but they don't actually do it. A couple people remarked that the county does a good job managing it, but not all types can be reused. And the concern, if you decrease the amount of trash, this is less profit for waste management companies. Trash in itself needs to be more expensive one way or another. One person noted that the best way to deal with this is not bring it into the circulation in the first place, but again, that becomes a supply chain question. Heavy emphasis on reduce was one person's note on this. A couple sample responses from a couple different groups, and again, this is not the width and depth of everything in the interviews, that will be more in the report. We've heard some of this concern about single-use plastics, both for humans and for the environment. Huge increase in the amount of plastics over time, particularly since the 1950s, and even more recently. Concern about the health impacts. Business concerns. We talked, actually, a number of my students worked with dining services and had a chance to talk. I put this under business because they are a business operation to some extent, and a lot of creative ideas on how they might approach things. Another business basically said, look, we understand that people are trying to be more environmentally conscious, but we need to be keeping up with this. We haven't really had time to think about switching, concerned about the cost. In talking with different folks, maybe there's an opportunity for a co-op that can bulk purchase and make it easier to switch. A different retailer's perspective, hadn't really thought about this, but seeing customer change even over the last 3 to 4 years, bringing in their own bags or really asking about those. Local government, lots of questions here. People on board with simple changes, plastic or stirrers, want to think about the broader focus, want a more regional approach, want to see a more systematic change for sustainable operations, want to think about exemptions like the pet waste question I've already raised, recommend avoid using the word ban on anything. I tried hard to think of other approaches, but some creative framing of this may be very helpful. One note, the Council of Government staff said that they could help with the model ordinance, but they had not yet been approached. So if you do want to take a regional approach and the COG is helpful, they're available. Grocery stores might be able to do a better job in helping people change their behaviors. Branding, marketing, and education, you're picking that up as a very solid theme. Again, equal playing field so that you're not disadvantaging local governments versus national level stores. So where are we? We're here, basically having shared some information, going to write this up. It's up to you to decide if and when and how to proceed and what to do about this. So there is a big shift in what's happened, a lot of change at all levels. There, I think, is a local interest in doing something to move this forward. Adopting small changes can lead to larger changes. I don't think there's perfection in this. The sample actions from other jurisdictions was quite interesting. And the education and outreach is really critical no matter what you might do. So we have finalized interviews. We're working on that summer report, done a number of outreach, which you can see there. I'm very happy to talk with anybody else about the details. I'm happy to answer questions you might have. Appreciate your time. And I'm going to stop sharing and see what you might have.
Dr. Fowler.
That's great.
Any questions from the supervisors? I can't see.
Madam Chair.
Okay, Supervisor Torino.
Did I hear you at the beginning say that you are preparing a written report that you will be sharing with us? Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, and what you're getting with this presentation is a sneak preview. We're right at the end of the semester, and the end of the semester is a little bit crazy, but trying to pull that all together and then synthesize it. What the report will have is, what the class was, what we heard, sort of general recommendations, and then actually appendices, basically 2 pages of all 37 jurisdictions we looked at closely, and those all have references and hyperlinks. to where the students found that information. So if you're intrigued by a community and how they approach something, you can go look at it in more detail.
Thank you.
Supervisor Magruder, is any question?
No questions, I just have lots of reactions, but no questions at this time, since we're not voting on anything.
Supervisor Whitman,
You want to know my reaction? Whoa! It's really, it's so thorough, so thoughtful, and so extremely well organized. It feels huge to think about how to approach it, but not as huge as it was before you gathered this information, organized it, and then are going to produce a report. So I really like, I think I caught the recommendation that COG said that they were willing to work on some kind of an ordinance, the wording of that.
I think, yes, I mean, COG staff
There
are-
was some respondent from COG who said they'd do that.
Oh.
So it's not a COG program or anything.
Gotcha.
It would be something that the local officials would have to initiate.
Right, of course, yeah. Okay, and so I haven't reached out to my colleagues in College Township, but at one point they were interested in pursuing this. Do you have any more information on that? I think you reached out to one of the supervisors there, maybe?
We did interview at least one supervisor from College Township, and I think the reaction was, we're curious to see what the other communities are doing. Keep us posted.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Just knowing the sort of culture at college, and it's very, very reasonable, and they didn't say no. So that's okay. But looking at the map and understanding the area, I think College would be a crucial municipality to include in this because of all the retail out there. Just thinking down.
We also reached out to Harris Township and to Halfling Township.
Mm-hmm. Any response from them? No.
Limited.
Okay. So, wow. We're obviously not taking any action on this tonight. I want to thank you. I thank the students. I feel that this is very doable now. But I personally will probably get together with people in Ferguson and the borough. I'm looking over here to our manager to see if there's any.
Well,
if you have any-
somebody's going to have to put together some specific recommendations for
Yep.
people to review, so that would be the next step.
Exactly.
If people want to move forward, it's, taking that information that Professor Fowler and, crafting that into some specific recommendation that
And
can be reviewed and approved or disapproved.
Okay. And I'm assuming that it would be okay for that group to be comprised of at least no more than 2 supervisors from each of the townships?
To be compliant with,
Right, with
to be
sunshine
compliant with
laws. Okay.
sunshine laws.
Perfect, for sure. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Fowler, thank you for your wonderful presentation, and we look forward to your report. Please thank your students as well as the Sustainable Institute that you're working with. We look forward to your report and moving forward to see how this. Thank you again. Thank you, Supervisor Whitman, also. I know you worked very closely with this, so thank you. If it is all possible, I would like to take a 5-minute break for my supervisors, unless you want to continue to move. What's the consensus there? Would you like to continue, or would you like to take a break?
I'm fine going on.
I took a short break during the presentation, so I'm okay.
I can continue.
Next on the agenda is the Regional Solar Power Purchase Agreement discussion. Mary Prager, Director of Finance. Mary?
Yes, so let me share my screen here. And
All right, so as you know, back in 2018, we started a discussion with the other municipalities to go into a regional power purchase agreement. In this solar power purchase agreement working group, which was developed or created in 2019, there's 15 members who are authorities and municipalities in the COG. So as we've been moving through this, we're finally, after taking some time for COVID, we're finally ready to issue an RFP out to, we engaged a consultant to help us with the RFP, and we're working together to get an RFP that will go out in June, I think, late June. So what they need from us is some information to complete the RFP. So we're going to talk about the RFP prep and the key points. We're going to talk about the process for determining the range of electricity for the solar power purchase agreement. We're going to talk a little bit about RECs, but not too much, and what our next steps are. So the decision points we need to complete the RFP, which is, of course, the request for proposal, is when we're drafting the request, we're going to ask for solar pricing at 40% of our current electric usage, 60%, 75%, and 100%. And their first question is, does this align with Patton Township's expectations? And my answer to that would be yes. Okay, we need to see the prices of electricity at different levels, so we know how big of a project we're going to build. The second question is really the crux, and that is, what is Patton Township's range that we're looking at? So what they're looking for is they're looking for a range of electricity that we think we're going to commit to the purchase agreement. Now, at this point in time, this is just for the request for the proposal. We're not really committing anything, but we need to say we're going to put in, so much of our electricity, whether it be 25%, 50%, 100%, whatever we decide, so that we can decide how big of a project we're going to need. And then they want us to look at any other requirements that we might want considered in the RFP. So the RFP key points are the expected solar price that we're expecting to get from the RFP is probably going to be the current market price, or close to the current market price. The objective of the RFP, and the objective has always been to obtain a lower electric cost. The decision we will need to make, which I'll discuss later on REC, which is renewable energy credits, we're going to make at a later date. The term options that we're going to ask for are 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year, or 25 years. Most of these projects are in the 20 to 25-year term. And once we sign the purchase agreement, we won't really enter into the agreement until our current electricity agreement is ended. So right now, we're really going month to month. But if we say in 3 months we sign a 1-year or a 2-year contract, we wouldn't go into the SPPA until after that contract expires. The main detail we need for the RFP is the size of the RFP. The size of the RFP is really going to determine how big of a project they're going to build. That's going to determine the timeline of the project, and it's also going to determine the location of the project. So right now, until we decide the size and send it on, the RFP on, we're not going to really know if we can get in on an existing project that's currently underway, or if we're going to have to build a new project, which might be 2 years longer than getting in on an existing project. We're not going to know whether we can get a project that is local, that is in the Pennsylvania, Jersey, the PJM area, or if it's going to be, somewhere else, not in Virginia or down in North Carolina, or where it's going to be. So the size is the number one concern. So right now, our total electricity that we would estimate for the 15 members of the SPPA working group is 32 million watt hours, 32 megawatt hours. Okay, the top 5, which is the school district, the water authority, the borough, CATA, and the county, account for 82% of that 32. We account for a little over 1%. We're at 400,000 kilowatts, or 0.4 megawatts. So determining the range of the electricity that we have to decide by May 25th, that we want to commit to this RFP will be determined by these 5 issues. First being the target, we have a renewable energy target. B is the price, what our current price is and where, and we'll talk about the price. C is aspiration, what is our goal? D is the risk involved, and E is our growth. So the first part is targets. These are the COGS targets. COG has a target of being 80% renewable by 2050, and the CAP renewable energy goal is renewables for 10% homes and 5% businesses. These are the municipality targets, and here is Patton Township, and we're transitioning to 100% clean renewable energy by 2050 or before. So that is our target, and obviously the solar power purchase agreement fits in with that. The price is obviously going to come from the RFP. We don't know what that price is right now, but it will come with the RFP. The aspirations, the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee's vision and mission is here, and I think that we can say that at Patton Township, we agree with this vision and this mission, and so our aspiration is that we continue to move towards 100% renewable. Okay, so I want to see this a little bit better on my screen. So the risk involved. So this is really the big, in my mind, the big item on determining how much we commit of our electricity. In this first graph here, you'll see that all sectors here is in the middle, just above, pretty much on all sectors is commercial, which is us, This is the retail price of electricity per month for the United States since 2000 to 2022. And so right here is the average price, which commercial is pretty much the same as average. Over here in this one is looking at 2021's electric rate and what it averaged, what the range was, what the range they expect to be going out to 2046. This red line here is what they're saying that the cost of solar, the price of solar electricity is going to be. We sign a 25-year contract, our price is going to be constant for 25 years. Okay? The yellow line is what they expect the average cost of the electricity to retail to be, and the green is ups and downs, the fudge, that they don't know what the average is. It can be anywhere in this green. So obviously, if we're on this red line and the retail price is on this lower part of the green line, we're paying more than we could pay on the market. If the retail price is up here, then we're paying less than we would on the market, which is good. So this would be bad, this would be good. That's where the risk comes in. The risk is we don't know where it's going to be. We know once we hit the price of the RFP, we know what this red line is going to be, but we don't know the other parts of it. This is something that our consultant, Green Sky, put out, and it hasn't been shown to anybody yet. You guys might be the first ones that see it besides the project management group. And it goes back to January 2021, and it goes through the price and what they figure the futures price of the market price in PGM versus the solar price is going to be. So they're figuring that based on some information they have, that our contract, our PPA should come in a little under 4 cents a kilowatt, which is about what we're paying now. We're actually, I think, paying a little under 5 cents a kilowatt. The market price, if you look back here into January 2021, the market price is actually lower than what we would have gotten through a project. But based on what's happened through after the pandemic, the market prices increased dramatically, with them expecting it to come back down and settle in a little bit over what we'll probably get on the SP. The last thing we talked about is growth. So we have to figure our current usage of electricity and what we're going to do in the future that will affect our usage. If we make energy efficient projects, our usage may go down. And if we do something like electric vehicles, our usage would go up. The renewable energy credits. These are credits that right now, when we contract, we let the broker that we're dealing with pull these credits on our behalf. And we're able to say, well, we're buying 100% wind. Because through the retailer, we're buying 100% wind. What's going to happen in this case is we're going to get prices with the supplier holding the RECs or us holding the RECs. If the supplier holds the RECs, then the price of the electricity will be a lot less than if we hold the RECs. And the reason for that is the supplier then will take the RECs out to the market and sell them because they have a market value associated with them. So they will take the RECs out and sell them, and that's another way for them to make money to pay for the project. So they don't have to make as much money on the electric generation. But if we hold the RECs, they can't sell them, so they're going to have to cover that cost with an increase in the cost of the electricity. We do not have to make this decision until, and we don't want to make this decision until after we see the prices, the RFP prices with and without us holding the RECs. Okay, so, so these are the questions they want answered to inform the RFP. And the red is my recommendation. So my recommendation for the expected minimum percent of electricity purchased is solar through the SPPA would be, we would commit to half. The maximum amount, I would say, is 90%. And the reason why I'm looking at 90% and not 100% is it gives us, yes, Dan. Yes, Dan.
Oh, I was waiting for your explanation. Why
Okay.
90% and not 100%?
What's that?
Why isn't our expected maximum 100%?
Because if we go 100%, okay, when we commit, we're not going to commit 100% of electricity. We're going to commit 400,000 kilowatt hours. Okay? And then if we do something where we don't purchase 400,000 kilowatt hours in a year, we still have to buy 400,000 kilowatt hours. Now, let's say we only use 350,000 kilowatt hours. Then the other 50,000 kilowatt hours would go out, the supplier would send them out to the market and sell them at market price. That might be good for us, it might be bad for us. Depends on where the market price is versus where our solar price is. So if we're paying 4 cents a kilowatt hour and the market is at, 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour, we're going to have to pay that half cent for those 50,000 kilowatt. And it also gives us a chance, and this is where it kind of gets in the weeds, it gives us a chance to hedge our risk. So, if we end up signing something at 4 cents a kilowatt hour, and then some breakthrough happens in solar panel generation or solar electricity production, where now they can build the same project for 50% of the price, so the solar price and the market price drops. We're still tied in for 25 years at 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And maybe market price is now at 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. If that happens, somebody's going to look back and say, Larry Pegger told us to sign this 25-year contract. What a lousy business decision. And however, if it stays at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, we could get it at 4 cents, it's a great move. So the 10% is to hedge our usage and the price. Does that answer?
Yeah, well, I'm actually more confused, Larry. Currently, when we pay for the kilowatt hours used, we don't have a contract where we're committing to buy X number of kilowatt hours per year. We just pay for kilowatt hours used. So I don't understand why in this new agreement, we would be buying in advance or committing in advance to purchase a fixed number of kilowatt hours per year. Why can't we just pay for the kilowatt hours we use?
Because currently, we're buying off of a retailer, okay? And that retailer's going out on the market and he's buying electricity. So he's not getting it from a specific project. In this solar power purchase agreement, we are contracting with somebody that has a specific project. So we're gonna tell this person, we need a 32 megawatt solar farm. And he's gonna go out and he's gonna say, okay, I gotta build this 32 megawatt solar farm and that's gonna cost me $50 million, okay? And I'm going to go borrow money off of some investors. I'm gonna borrow $50 million to build this. And those investors are gonna charge me 7% interest, okay? And I have to pay them back. So he's going to need to say to those investors, I have these 15 groups locked in to pay me X number of dollars a month for the next 25 years. So they're gonna pay me, I'm gonna pay you, and the little bit left over is gonna be my profit. So that's why we have to commit to 400,000, 375,000 or something so that this person could go out and get the investment.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different situation.
Yeah, thank you very much for the explanation. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I understand better now. I just was ignorant about, about the whole process of what we're committing to. When you say 50% and 90%, I thought it was just, based upon our usage, but it's not. It's based upon our projected.
When I say 50%, they're gonna put 200,000 kilowatt hours.
Yeah, I understand now. Yeah, thank you.
And then Larry, Suton here.
Yes, Super.
And so I get the idea of wanting to lock in a rate right now that over time, it seems like it would be beneficial for us because it's not going to fluctuate, obviously, with the market. So we may be actually getting a good deal and not paying as much, correct?
That's correct. That is true today. It was not true back in 2021.
Yeah, and so, as you mentioned, when they're looking at the forecast, then, are they looking at factoring in innovation? Because what you said is 4 cents could be favorable now, but in 5 years, some technology comes about and, things tank and it's a lot cheaper to make electricity than, again, as you said, we're locked in for all these years overpaying, correct? So are the... That's correct.
When they're, okay, so when we lock in the price, obviously, we're locking into the current project. So that's gonna be fixed for 25 years. The estimates that they're making, I do believe, and I'm not 100% sure, Sudan, but I do believe they have some sort of normal innovation, okay? But I asked that question to the consultant, and his response to me was, and along with the person from the Water Authority who's pretty knowledgeable about solar, their response to me was, solar's pretty much at its bottom, okay? They aren't expecting any more innovations. But, my response to that was, when I was walking around with my Motorola flip phone, nobody was thinking about my iPhone 11. There's a lot that can happen. And I would go 100%. It's up to the board. It's not my decision. It's the board's decision. I am just making a recommendation that I would leave a little bit for the market. And maybe I'm wrong. I'll say it right out. I could turn out to be completely, utterly wrong, and that 10% could cost us more than we're paying. But maybe we do something, we put solar panels on top of the Public Works building, and that reduces some of our electric usage, and we're not doing 400,000 anymore. So, you know, there's different reasons why I look to hedge. I look at this as I did in my last job where I did a lot of foreign currency buying, and I would hedge a little bit of that too. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. Nobody can predict the future. If I could, I would be sitting on a beach someplace spending my lottery money.
Larry, can you finish your, I think you stopped at number 3.
Yeah, so number 3 is, does Patton Township know its expected amount of solar electricity from it's going to be somewhere between the numbers, the minimum and the maximum, and will probably be close to the maximum. Do we expect to purchase or retain the renewable energy credits? I want to wait to see the prices. And the only thing with it, we're interested in an existing installation because there seems to be a backlog of building new installations, of getting the approval. So it looks like if we have to build a new solar farm, it's going to be 2 to 3 years out. If we could get involved in one that's already started and looking for people to buy the electricity, that would be my preference. Just to finish up real quick, and we can do some more questions. This is just the timeline. So May 25th, we're looking for, they're looking for us to give them the answers of our minimum and maximum so they can draft the RFP. We're going to release the RFP in June and hopefully make in the fourth quarter decision of what we're going to do. With that, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everybody. And any more questions? We have time because our next meeting is on the 25th. We have time to kind of digest this and think about it. If we want to do 75 minimum, 100 maximum, I've only provided my recommendation. Just to let you know, COG went 50 to 90. The Water Authority is going to go 100. The CATA is going to go 100. The school district is having some issues with some of the economists that are on the school board that know more about risk in the economy than I do. So they're kind of wanting to look at it a little bit more. Stakeholder Borough is giving it some thought, and they're not looking to do 100%. They'll probably come in at 80. I think they're going to come with 50 to 80. So that just gives you an idea of some of the ones that I've heard about. And it's up to the board. It's your decision. That's why you guys make the big bucks.
Right. Okay, any supervisors have any more questions for Larry at this time?
I got questions about that last statement. Sutan here. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be helpful to digest this a bit. You had talked about some economists on the school board, having more knowledge than you, which you have a lot of knowledge, I've been seeing, it would actually be helpful to understand what their reluctance is.
Yeah, so what I could do is I could reach out to Peter Buck, who's on the school board and also on the working group, and get him to give me more detail of what their concerns are, and then I can drop an email to everybody on the board, so that we know what the concern is. Is that okay, Doug?
Yeah, and we could, I mean, if we make a decision on the 25th at our next meeting, is that enough time, or do they need those numbers during?
No, that should be enough time. I know we're having a meeting Wednesday morning on the 25th.
The 25th, right.
But
Yeah, I
they're
mean,
not
because that,
they're not gonna finish the RFP right then. If I email them after our meeting on Wednesday night, they'll be fine.
okay.
Larry, thank you. Any,
Welcome, Betsy. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So as many times as I've heard this, I can't believe that
Everybody is a little different.
right. I can't believe that this is the first time that I've thought of the need for Patton Township to essentially get its own, at least an estimate of our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. Because of the goal that we've set for 2050, I would like to know what percentage of our energy usage is from our buildings, what percentage from our vehicles. I'm assuming it's going to be fairly similar to what in terms of percentages of what the inventory was for all of the center region, but that might not be a strong assumption. I guess I'm seeing the bigger picture here because yeah, we're going to have to be chipping away wherever we can at
Right,
the
you're talking
emissions.
about total greenhouse.
Total greenhouse gas
Not
emissions.
just
But
electricity.
then what role are the energy that we get from the solar power purchase agreement is going to go, right now it's going to go mostly into our buildings and traffic lights,
Yes,
I'm
that's
assuming.
correct.
But it might ultimately or eventually go into cars.
Right, that's exactly right. Or, you know, if we do some energy efficient improvements on the building, it actually decreases our electricity use.
True. And if we put solar panels on the,
It would decrease what we're
it
buying
would
from the grid.
decrease the solar, but but if we increase our need through purchase of electric vehicles, if they become, one, available on the market, and two, meeting the standards that, say, the police force needs in terms of, acceleration and range, then,
Right.
yeah, all those factors. Ooh, so many unknowns. Okay. Sorry, I'm just digesting this. I'm just throwing that out. Maybe just to continue keeping it in the discussion.
Right, so I'll see if I can do some work on that, see if I can determine.
But
our
just,
percentage of
it's the
greenhouse
setup,
gas.
yeah, just in terms of setting this up then for the 25th, then
Yeah.
the board, at that point, the board's gonna have to decide to accept Larry's recommendation or make change to one or more of the numbers that Larry, those questions that Larry has on here.
Right.
So that will have to be done on the 25th.
I understand that. And but can I get clarification on that?
Yes,
Larry, is it okay for us to go in with a range? Or we have to have a specific number?
That's what numbers
No,
1
no,
and 2
that's-
are setting that range.
Is there- so-
that's what they actually want.
Okay,
What's the
I couldn't
minimum
remember that.
amount?
Okay, thank
What's
you.
the minimum amount we're gonna put in the RFP, and what's the maximum
Okay.
amount?
Gotcha.
We'll give them a percentage, they'll convert it into kilowatts.
And again, one
but
last
it
thing.
will be arranged.
Great.
I hear everyone's concern and interest, but I don't want to lose out on the work that Larry put into this. You know, if we can eliminate, you know, moving it to the 25th when Larry has already done all the research and calculations, why are we waiting? So I would like to throw out to the board, can we accept Larry's recommendation with all of the work that he's actually put into all of this?
Sutan here.
Good time, go ahead.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think we've heard here about government sometimes not moving as quickly as people would like, and so I'm definitely one for efficiency and expediting things. What I'm hearing is that this can have pretty significant implications monetarily. Again, if we're getting into a contract that is extending, you know, years out. And so given that we have the cushion to wait to make a decision until the next meeting, it seems like I would like that time, because just to get some clarity, Larry, you had mentioned we could actually be retrofitting, putting solar panels on our buildings. That would actually reduce then the consumption that we would have from this company. And so if that's the case, and if that's the cheaper option, so that we're not buying more than we actually need to, that's something I would like to just have more information about.
Right. Our project management team meets on a weekly basis, and we meet with the consultant about half of that time, like every other week. So he's supposed to be in the meeting, and I want to address specifically that issue where we put in our own, as do other people, because Ferguson Township's looking to put in solar panels on their roofs. The county already has it on the county correctional facility. They have solar panels. So it would be probably to our advantage if we in the future go put solar panels on the Public Works building, that we don't want to be committed to 25 years in a contract at a set price. Now also, you know, we're not a big player in this. We're only 1% of the whole project. So whether we go, you know, 85 or 90%, it's not going to probably make or break the projects. Anyone in the top 5, the school district or State College Borough or somebody like that decides they don't want to be in the project, or they go 50% instead of 75%, that could make a big difference. But I can also come back to you within the next week on how a project like us on putting solar panels on the Public Works building would affect this. So it's just another reason why I wouldn't be comfortable committing 100%.
Okay.
That's just.
We can wait till the 25th. Thank you.
Yeah, we can definitely wait till the 25th. Let me get you some more information, drop you some emails.
Okay. Wow. Thank you, Supervisor Magruder, and thank you, Larry. Any more questions? All right, moving on. Next on the agenda is diversity, equity, and inclusion, initial decision on hiring principal. Doug, is that you?
Yeah, I started working on this, a couple months ago probably, and have put together the outline that's shown there on page 11 of the agenda as just a real rough outline of moving forward ultimately to give us a little more flexibility on hiring. I think primarily when we look at the police department also, but this would apply to all positions. Just to make it, quick, the process is very important to get down to the final step, which under number 4. And I won't read it all to you, but in essence, it's a way of both identifying things that are important to us and then also creating a process where instead of taking the top candidate from a position that instead of that, we create a pool of what we call qualified candidates. They meet a minimum level of qualifications. There may be several different ways that we set that minimum level and test people to make sure they qualify, test, interview, etc. But then the real key to the whole process is down under number 4 and the three things that, and potentially more goals that we may want to include there. Select hires from that qualified pool such that they meet one or more of these following goals. A, create a workforce that most closely aligns with the demographics of the township population. Obviously, I think we want to move away from hiring white males, to be blunt about it.
Mm-hmm.
Give us more, to give us more flexibility. Half the population of Patton Township is women. So we should probably be looking, especially on the police force, to add more women to the force. We heard tonight that 11% of the population is Asian American, so we should be trying to do that. I don't know what the percent population of African Americans is, but we should be trying to hit that also. And then also the other two goals that we want to keep in mind, and a person may meet, like I said, at least one or more than one of these goals, is create workforces with high degree of professionalism. So if somebody really comes out in that pool and, we need to get the best candidate, then we can do that. And then the other times, we sometimes run across candidates who may not test really well, may not interview very well, but we know from the whole process we've gone through is this is a person who really wants to do this job. And, there's one particular candidate, we revised our hiring procedure a few years ago so we could make sure we hired this gentleman because he really had no experience in police, didn't have any training in police, but you could tell when we talked to him for 2 or 3 years that he would make an excellent police officer, and he has. So every once in a while we run across people like that who, that they want to be stewards, they want to be, keepers of the peace. They really do want to do the things that we really want, that the community wants them to do. So to me, those were the top 3 qualities that I wanted to, not qualities or characteristics that I wanted to include in that. So my question to the board tonight, and we can include this on the next agenda too, are there additional items in the outline that should be, that we should include? Are there details that you want to make sure we see under one of those outline items? And while we're going out and looking for input on this, are there other groups, local groups that we should be in contact with and say, hey, would you review this policy outline for us at this point and provide us input, and then as we move forward in fleshing this out, provide input going forward also. With that, I'll look and see what the board has. I'll look for input from the board.
Supervisors, Supervisor Whitman. Supervisor Whitman, Betsy?
Yeah, oh, it's Whitman, I heard, sorry. Sorry about that. Yes. I remember when we were being introduced or given the overview of the inner workings of the police department and the hiring process, I remember noting, in fact, talking to Supervisor Buckland at the time, that we had recommended that a woman be placed on the interview panel. and also a person of color or a person of, that didn't fit the white male, other than a woman. And I think they're, yeah, there was another word I was looking for there that was more inclusionary than people of color. They're different cultures as opposed to necessarily different identified colors, whatever. I'm putting my foot in my mouth here. But to add that, and then one group I thought would be good to reach out to, send to, was Strategies for Justice, Terry Watson, and then also Ben Jones. Might have a good set of eyes on that.
I like what you're outlined of.
Really nice.
Since you're asking for, people we could reach out to, which Betsy gave you a couple of people. I don't know if you've checked with other HR people in municipal government or, other that have worked out their own policies.
Not specific. I've talked to a couple, I've gotten some legal opinions that this is a viable path that we can go down. Again, the process of how you get to that qualified pool is the important piece.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can reach out.
Yeah, I'm sure other groups have already gone through this process and, modified their own procedures to maximize opportunities to diversify their own workforces.
Supervisor Magruder, you have any comment?
Yeah, it looks good to me. I'm not within Penn State. I'm not sure. Reaching out to those individuals.
Yeah, I can work with Sharima and see if she can get me some, Sharima Young, who's with government relations, to see if she can get me some information.
Doug, I thank you for this presentation, and also since you have Dr. Nalini on, to reach out to her as well.
Will do.
All right.
I just want to say, I really like your concept of choosing from a pool.
Yes.
Having a pool reach a certain levels of criteria, and then being able to choose within that gives you that latitude to reach out to that person who might not have tested well, but you knew that he was going to be a good officer for one reason or another. So that's really great.
Okay, any other supervisor, any other questions? All right, moving on. Doug, next one is Council of Governments decision on remote attendance policy. Doug?
I can give the quick background. This came out of the COG, I think, Executive Committee. I think primarily it comes down to there are people who would like to see more people attend COG General Forum and committee members meetings in person, and there are people who would prefer to at least have the flexibility to continue to attend by Zoom. And I think COG is looking for the executive committee, they want consensus feedback from the respective municipalities. So, and this is due back at executive committee in June, so we can talk about this again at least one more time if you'd like. But with that, I'll let the board discuss it.
Any supervisor, if it's okay, can we move that on to the May 25th?
Dan had Supervisor Trevino.
Dan?
Oh, well, I've already given you my opinion, Pam, personally, and I thought I had given it in the meeting before this one, but maybe not. I want to continue to the option of having virtual attendance mixed with, in-person attendance. We've learned a lot of valuable, our experience has been very valuable during the pandemic, that when you have meetings where people can attend virtually, you're going to have an increased participation. You have more, especially our constituents, more of them are going to participate when they can do it from home and address it. And very, the difference between the number of participants between, before pandemic, where everyone had to be in person in order to speak to us, with the exception of the controversial issues. When you have a controversy like the Patton Crossing rezoning request, then everybody shows up. But for most of our business, there's very little input from our constituents. And we're getting more now that we have virtual attendance. And I like the opportunity, if I'm at home ill, like I had a cold a couple of weeks ago, or I like our chair Rob today, she's staying home because she self-quarantined. Someone she had been in contact with came down with COVID, even though she's fine. We need that option. So I'm pretty strong, and I hope the rest of the board agrees with me. I feel very strongly that we should maintain the opportunity for virtual participation in our municipal meeting and in our COG meetings.
Supervisor McGruder?
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Supervisor Whitman?
Yeah, I agree that we should maintain that option. And I have mixed feelings about what I'm going to say next. It might be possible to set a minimum number of, or to request a minimum number of physical attendances per year. That's going to be an administrative nightmare. Somebody's going to have to keep track of that. The other thing that I hesitate about saying this idea of setting a minimum number of attendances per year is that I'm not really sure that whether a person attends physically or attends virtually, that they are going to be more or less involved, depending on where they are. I have heard comments that people who attend virtually don't interact or don't seem to be as connected as those who attend in person, but I've seen it go both ways. So I think there is an advantage, however, to at least encouraging a minimum number of attendances in person, because a lot of the work of any organization occurs behind the scenes. That one-on-one conversation, walking out the door or on a break, seeing somebody face to face. We do. It's easier to do at a township level because there's 5 supervisors, but at the COG level, where there's almost 30, I think it does have an impact if people are at the COG meeting. Anyway, whatever.
So, Supervisor Whitman, what is your decision?
I would like to comment on.
Okay. We'll go with Sutan's comment.
And so when you had spoken about the mandatory or minimum number of, basically mandatory attendance, physically you meant for the members.
Like 3 out of 12 or 3 times a year or something.
Yeah, and so I agree that there are some limitations when we are virtual, as we think about distractibility. I know even in my work, when I'm providing remote, work, with clients, virtual formats can be an impediment, right? So you have your phone, you may be doing your dishes, laundry, what have you. And so I guess the investment, things can get lost then, I guess, in that way. And I just think about accessibility, right? And so accessibility purposes. So the ability for more individuals to be able to participate. That's what we're talking about with accessibility. And so I think for members, speaking about myself, for example, I'm working full time, right? And then to have to, working 8 to 5 and then, go to a physical location and then do all that and then travel back home, it's pretty late at that point.
Yeah.
And as a person who is maybe considering, bringing life into this world, family planning, that's time away from, seeing your kid to sleep. And so I definitely think, encouragement of individuals to be able to come in person, members, and I would not want to make that mandatory because I think that can foster, resentment and have just other wide-ranging impacts. But I do agree with, we want individuals to be committed to these spaces, but for accessibility purposes, again, agreeing with Dan, we want to make sure we're providing multiple formats for participation.
But, so I would modify what I said is basically what Sutan said, make it always available with the suggestion and encouragement that when possible, people do attend every now and then for obvious benefits. Yeah.
Okay.
I hear you.
My suggestion is because quite a few of us that are chairs or vice chairs are coming from meetings, trying to get from one meeting to another. It gives us flexibility without it being mandatory. The majority of my other colleagues from other townships are in agreement to keep it flexible. So I'm looking to do the same. I would like for us to have that option of the flexibility of keeping it virtual. So, Doug, you can actually present that back to COG, and at my executive meeting, I will do the same.
I will do that.
All right. Moving on, next on the agenda is the Center Area Transportation Authority, CATA, request for a comment draft budget. Doug?
Yeah, just, tonight, I think best to just see if there are questions from the board members. Mark Parfit was not available. I didn't think it was useful for Luana Oliva to wait 3 hours to get to this point in the agenda, so I told her I'd check and see if there were questions tonight, and she is committed to be here on the 25th. So there's actually 2 actions that CAT has requested information on. 1, if you have any feedback on their draft budget, and 2, are we ready to consider action to approve the contributions for next year, which, as you recall, includes a 5% increase from last year's as kind of just a placeholder because we can't figure out any better way to calculate things regarding COVID. So if there are questions, I'll forward those to Luana and ask her to be prepared to talk. Otherwise, we'll have this at the beginning of the May 25th agenda, unless somebody wants to take action tonight.
No, okay. Supervisor Trevina?
I thought at the last meeting, well, my feeling is that we should go ahead and approve the 5% increase. Because I thought that that's basically what our consensus was, and maybe I'm mistaken. So I don't need to wait for another meeting, but maybe some other board members want to study this further.
Supervisor Magruder?
I'm in agreement with Dan.
Supervisor Whitman?
I third it, yep.
All right.
Somebody wants to make a motion, we can approve it tonight.
I move we approve the increase in 5% of for next year's, our next year's local match from previous year's local match.
Second.
Second. All right. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposed and any abstentions? The motion passed.
Thank you.
All right, moving to the consent agenda. Well, for update, I would like for the proclamations to be read by each of our supervisors. Would Supervisor Magruder start off, and then Supervisor Torino, and then Supervisor Whitman? Sorry if I put you guys on the spot.
You're fine. So this is the Patton Township Proclamation or Emergency Medical Services Week from May 15th to the 21st of 2022. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of the emergency medical services team are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas the access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine, and whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills, and whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week now. Therefore, the Board of Supervisors of Patton Township, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 15th to the 21st, 2022, as Emergency Medical Services Week. With the EMS strong theme, Rising to the Challenge, I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Proclaimed this 11th day of May 2022 by the Patton Township Board of Supervisors.
Madam Chair, I second the motion to approve this proclamation.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, proclamation.
Next proclamation, move to accept this proclamation of the Patton Township to officially recognize 2022 National Police Week. Whereas National Police Week in America was created to honor and recognize the sacrifice and contributions made by police officers in communities both large and small, and whereas National Police Week, held every year in May, was created in 1962 through a proclamation issued by then-President John F. Kennedy, which designated the week of May 13th through 19th, 1962, as Police Week. And whereas our community will always appreciate and commend the risks police officers take every day to ensure our community's laws are properly enforced and that public safety is ensured. And whereas, now more than ever, the community also appreciates and encourages the community involvement facilitated by our police officers to both better serve and instill mutual trust, camaraderie, and positive relationships among our increasingly diverse population in Patton Township. And whereas police truly engage with and serve the public in the most varied and wide-ranging manner, and their efforts do not go unnoticed. And now, therefore, the Patton Township Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the week of May 15th through May 21st, 2022 as Police Officers Week in Patton Township, and encourages all residents to join the township in recognition of the services, sacrifices, and efforts the Patton Township Police Department makes to best serve our community. Proclaimed this 11th day of May 2022 by the Patton Township Board of Supervisors.
May I get a motion to accept?
That was my motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Proclamation passes, and Supervisor Whitman.
I move to accept the Patton Township Proclamation of National Public Works Week, May 15 through 21, 2022. Ready and resilient. Whereas public work professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, emergency management, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Patton Township. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated effort of public works professionals who are federally mandated, first responders, and the engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for all citizens, civic leaders, and children in Patton Township to gain knowledge and maintain ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works, first responders, and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and the Canadian Public Works Association, be it now resolved, we, the Board of Supervisors of Patton Township, do hereby designate the week of May 15th through 21st, 2022, as National Public Works Week, and we urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designated to pay tribute to our public work professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Proclaimed this 11th day of May, 2022, by the Patton Township Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Madam
There's a
Chair,
second.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passed. Thank you to all the supervisors. Thank you for our EMS, police, and public workers for all of their hard work and dedication. And now,
In our
Doug,
police department.
She said
and police department.
I thought she said police. Maybe not. Oh, EMS.
And EMS and police department. So
There you
sorry.
go. Sorry, yeah.
So Madam Chair, I move to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda.
I second.
Okay, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Next on the agenda is the manager's report.
Thank you. Under correspondence, had several pieces tonight. The development update, if there are any questions, respond to those. I had provided a letter of support for a grant application for Millbrook Marsh. That was included. There was a wrap-up report from hazardous waste, the household hazardous waste collection. They collected 44,000 pounds, which is very good for the community. All that material will be properly disposed of. There was an update from Department of Environmental Protection about the groundwater issue in Benner Township related to PFAS. Information there if anybody has. Again, I'm referring everyone to the DEP if they have questions about that. They are the experts on the issue. And just as a point of information, the West Penn Power's default price, or price to compare for starting in June, is 10.1 cent per kilowatt hour. That's just a follow-up on our conversation last week to our last meeting to move towards the default price for at least 3 months. So just so you know, we didn't think it was gonna be quite that high. We were thinking maybe it'd be around 9, but it did go over 10, so.
Yeah.
Which is still right in the same range where all the contract options we had last time too, so. Let's see, announcements, there was, article from, Department of Environmental Protection that, our local Geisinger clinic here on Abigail Lane had won a, Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence for, reducing for energy conservation, and I won't, the details are in there somewhere, sorry. I can't remember it. It was pretty good. They revamped some of their HVAC systems and were able to reduce their energy load on their building by quite a bit. And then I will make this announcement tonight, and then one more time on the 25th, that reminder that summer trash schedule will change to a 6 a.m. start after Memorial Day. Just note, Memorial Day is May 30th, office is closed. Ditto for July 4th. Bulk waste collection is ongoing this week. Primary election is next Tuesday, and in late June, our new township website will go live. You may have seen we're starting to push that message out on social also. Things are on schedule, so that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Doug. Moving on, next on the agenda is committee reports. Is there any supervisor that would like to add to their committee report at this time?
Chairman Rob, I didn't submit a written report on the Parks Governance Special Committee, but there's nothing really new to report. We're just going through the process of we've reviewed the current memorandums of understanding and the other documents. We're discussing currently what the Parks Authority should be doing and what they should not be doing. So there's really nothing to report to the supervisors at this point. We're still in discussion phase.
Any other supervisors would like to add? I just want to say our public safety meeting was yesterday, so my report will be on the May 25th. Any other supervisor at this time? All right, moving on is other business. Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Trevino.
I don't have any other business, but I just noticed we have a citizen who wishes to address the board, Susan Buda.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yay,
Sorry.
Susan.
That's okay. That's okay. Can I speak now or?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was confused about when to speak, and maybe I should have spoken in the very beginning of the public comment, but I thought it was under correspondence, so I was waiting for that, but then it wasn't. So that's okay. So I wrote an email, and I don't know if you saw it or not, with concerns about safety for bicycle riders and pedestrians crossing North Atherton. In particular, I had a experience. Well, I've crossed numerous times and had some close calls, but some frustration and an experience up at the one that is where traffic coming out of Verizon and Starbucks goes on to North Atherton. And I was wondering if the intersections that cross North Atherton, if they could be addressed to be improved for their safety. One idea that I have had based on a light down at Blue Course is to have all the traffic stop at a red light when someone calls for a walk signal. When that walk signal is flashing, that all traffic would be stopped. I do believe that's the case at the Blue Course intersection, that at least for 5 seconds or so, it seems that I can start going across and everybody is stopped, and then traffic starts to move after a while. This would be helpful, I think, at many of those intersections. From my perspective, I'd be interested in learning more from an engineering or traffic department perspective on this. But I really feel that should be addressed because, especially if it's designated as a bike route. And so I would like to see that something done to improve the safety there. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Doug, I think that, isn't that a PennDOT issue?
No, it is a local issue. Alexander has put up on the screen projector that Ms. Buddha's comments were included under public comments as part of item 2.1. I had made the response to her that if the board would like, we can direct this proposal to the township's traffic engineering, our new traffic engineering consultant, and we can get an estimate for them for what it would take to look into this and provide a recommendation back. Right now, we're still reviewing the contract with McCormick Taylor, but that should be finalized out here hopefully in the next few days. Hint, hint, Miss Solicitor. Again, that would be my response to Ms. Buddha's recommendation is we'll provide it. We'll talk to the real experts about it and see what they would recommend in the circumstance.
Okay, thank you, and
That's a great
thank
idea.
you. All right.
Chairman Rob? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just follow up? I think we've heard about this issue at that intersection before. I think it was
I don't
last year.
remember.
You don't remember it?
Might have been in your term, but
Well, anyway,
I'm not required. I remember.
I agree, Doug. I
Yeah.
think this, if we have the ability to adjust the walk patterns, the pedestrian walk, and provide pedestrians 5 seconds or something before the light allow the cars to start moving, I think that's a good idea to improve safety there, certainly for our pedestrians.
Yeah, well, we'll have the traffic engineers look at it. I mean, there's pros and cons to doing that, so we'll have them look into it and bring you back, what are the impacts of doing that? If you're looking at congestion and greenhouse gas emissions, making cars wait will increase greenhouse gas emissions. So there are always trade-offs in these things, and that's why we'll get these guys to look at it and provide a full range of recommendations.
Good.
Okay, Supervisor Torino, thank you, and thank you, Ms. Buddha. We will be looking into this for you.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is other business. Any other business? Doug?
No, ma'am.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. This meeting is now adjourned.